The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh man, there's got to be something to listen to on this dial.
This message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays, as we light the void with Joe Root on Spaced Out Radio. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void, on Facebook at Lighting the Void, and you can call into tonight's show at 501-777-5631. You can also follow Joe at spacedoutradio.com.
We're sorry, your call cannot be completed as done.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Why don't you talk into the microphone? I got a backup mic right here. Check 1, 2. Testing, testing. Yeah, they both working, and guess what? They don't like no feedback. What's up?
Now, let's fire the show up and light the void on Spaced Out Saturdays with your host, Joe Root.
What's up, everybody? Good evening. Welcome to Spaced Out Saturday tonight. I am your host, Joe Root, and it's good to have you with us again on this lovely Saturday night, June 16th on into the 17th. Beautiful night for sky watching with that waxing moon. Thank you all for joining us wherever you're listening from across the web or on our affiliate stations. It's going to be a cool night tonight. Let's welcome in everyone listening on those affiliates. WQEE 99, Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and thefringe.fm. And we rock out every night with Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. That music you're hearing is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. Also, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. And you can follow me on Twitter at Lighting the Void. You can subscribe to the new YouTube channel, which is pretty simple, just Spaced Out Radio. We're also on iHeartRadio, TuneIn. And you can download the shows from iTunes. And, of course, the website is spacedoutradio.com. If you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. And if you want to take part in the show, you can sign into one of the chat rooms on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. If you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio or the Fringe FM chat room as well, and I'll get to your questions as best as I can. The call-in number is 501-777-5631 if you have any questions. That phone line is open and always ready for your phone calls. Last Saturday, we had Marla Freeze on, so if you missed that, that show is in the archives. Wonderful show. And don't forget, on the website as well, we have Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV and Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers as well, so pretty awesome content. Now, a long time ago, when I first started hosting Spaced Out Saturday, I had a mishap, and I invited Ronny LeBlanc to come on, and something come up, and he couldn't do it. And I told you guys a long time ago that we would reschedule the show, and we have rescheduled the show. and it's going to work out even better. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Ronny first, okay? Now, Ronny LeBlanc has always had an interest in things that were deemed paranormal or strange, stories that defied explanation, the laws of physics and belief in the minds of those who heard about the encounters. His interest spans from the esoteric, metaphysical, and alternative history to cryptozoology, science, and ufology. He has spent a majority of his life devouring books and content surrounding the subject matter of UFOs, Bigfoot, and the paranormal. Once his personal life seemed to become intertwined with his research, he was driven to write a book about his experience and the hidden history of Monsterland. And we're going to be talking about that tonight, too. He currently works in the marketing and advertising industry in Boston, Massachusetts. And Ronny is also the host and co-host, actually, of the new podcast called Monsterland. It's the Monsterland podcast with co-host Matty Blake. Now, you can check the Monsterland podcast out on www.pod617.com. You can also learn more about Monsterland by visiting RonnyLeBlanc.com. And here's the cool part. Since we rescheduled, Matty Blake is also with us. Now, Matty is an actor, host, and writer educated on the comedy stages of Boston. He came to New York City and quickly built a career as a working actor. He is the host of the talk show Drilling Down, an after show about the curse of Oak Island on the History Channel. He wrote and starred in his own sports comedy studio show, which is off par with Matty Blake on the new defunct Back Nine Network on DirecTV. Recent credits also include the David Cross film hits, Alpha House, Boardwalk Empire, How to Make It in America, and 30 Rock. He's appeared on Comedy Central, VH1, G4, ESPN, and many more. He starred in over 20 national network commercials and has had a successful career in voiceover. As a writer and host, Matty has been nominated for a Webby Award as well as a Sports Emmy Award for his work with NBC Sports. And guys, thank you so much for joining us on Spaced Out Saturday. It's a real pleasure. I can't wait to get into this subject matter.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having us.
So, Ronny, let's do the Monsterland thing real quick. I don't have a clue about this, so you got to fill me in. Everybody knows how I am about cryptids and stuff, and if there's one person, well, I'll just say, actually, if there's two people that can convince me, it's got to be you guys. It's got to be.
We'll try, man. We'll try. Monsterland is an area in Leominster, Massachusetts, which is in central Mass. And it's kind of this area that the locals have dubbed Monsterland. And as a kid, I had no, real clue why it was called that. It was just a place that all the neighborhood kids would take their bikes or dirt bikes and, spend the summers out there riding in the sand dunes. And it was next to these huge power lines. But a lot of the stories that kind of bled through were of teenagers going up there to party or couples were parking. And then all of a sudden there'd be a silhouette of this creature off in the distance, or they'd see these balls of light. People have actually seen flying saucers, UFOs in that same vicinity. And, for me, it was just a place to kind of go with my friends. And I didn't really understand it until I had my own experience when I was real young in those same woods, kind of heading down to Monsterland to go meet up with friends, and kind of avoided this trail every time. It would just give me the creeps, and went down and had this experience where I kind of really feel like it was a Bigfoot encounter. And we can kind of talk a little bit about that, but it really kind of changed my life. It kind of went in my subconscious for a while and didn't really emerge until many years later.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Matty, how did you get involved in this subject matter?
Well, I read Ronny's book, Monsterland, and I host a radio show here in Boston called Matty and Nick, Afternoon Drive 3 to 7, 107.3 FM. But I read his book, and I've been into the paranormal my entire life. And I host a show also on History Channel called Drilling Down, which is a offshoot of the show Curse of Oak Island. And when I read Ronny's book, I knew immediately that I wanted to have him on my radio show. And so we decided to do a thing called Monsterland Monday, because it's a local Boston show, and his book is based obviously right outside of Boston. And the first night we had him on, the phone lines just absolutely lit up. It was like, it's like an Art Bell type of thing. It was like, wow, people want to tell their stories. So that's how kind of eventually the podcast was born. Him and I doing these Monsterland Mondays on my radio show. And then it was, wow, we should do our own thing. So we're doing the podcast now.
And you guys already got your first episode out of Nick Redfern, of all people. Who doesn't love that guy and everything he does?
He's the best.
Yeah, it's like starting a baseball show and going, who should we have on? How about Babe Ruth? Can we get Babe Ruth on the show?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of people when I was going to talk to Nick, who said, oh, he's just a guy that writes and sells books. He's got so many books out. And I was like, I've never judged anybody until I've read their material. And after I read his book, I was done. I fell in love with the man. And you guys did a great interview with him. So it's really cool. I mean, I love seeing this stuff out here, man. The more, like you guys were saying, there's thousands, millions of podcasts out there. And this subject matter is becoming more interesting, not just to the people that have always been in it, but a lot of people are getting converted more and more each day. Right.
It's becoming a lot more mainstream. And I think a lot has to do with, the news the past 6 to 8 months now with the Pentagon study and stuff that, Tom DeLonge's been doing. And so I think a lot more people are focusing on this. I think the timing is coming together.
Now, Ronny, earlier you mentioned something about something was trapped in your subconscious. That's very interesting, a very interesting statement. What did you mean by that?
Well, when I had the encounter where I decided, I was on my bike, I decided to go down this trail, and as I kind of entered into this trail, it seemed like the whole forest kind of changed, and I just recalled not hearing the typical birds chirping or seeing squirrels running around. It became really eerily quiet, and my senses were kind of on fire, and I was going down the trail, and at one point I stopped and kind of straddled the bike in between my legs and had my feet on the ground. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't move forward. I was just kind of stopped, and I was looking straight ahead at the trail, which kind of narrowed. And I think I was kind of, what am I doing? This is a little creepy. Let's get out of here. And at that moment, the forest erupted in front of me where it sounded like an elephant took off at a sprint, the ground started pounding, and I looked straight ahead and I can see shrubs and, small trees moving, getting pushed around, but there was nothing there. It was almost like The Predator, where you couldn't really see anything, but there was all this commotion. And, I could feel the sound kind of through the soles of my feet and my chest. And as soon as it started and kind of moved off, it stopped and it was quiet again. And I kind of regained composure and took off on my bike, pedaling so fast. And in my mind, as I'm racing home, I'm going, was that a deer? Was that a bear? Was that a moose? I knew all the animals in the woods, and a Bigfoot never entered my mind. So it kind of, buried in the subconscious. And it was maybe, 20 years later, as I kind of moved back home, and I had a friend had an interesting find in the woods, that it kind of bubbled back up. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. And as I was reading similar stories of people encountering, whether in Bigfoot areas and having these same kind of experiences, and we've heard all about the different invisibility and cloaking capabilities, and people have talked about that.
Yeah.
Which was furthest from my mind, but that story, that experience and encounter definitely matched a lot of other ones I was reading and looking into. So then I realized, holy crap, maybe I really did have some kind of encounter, in Monsterland.
Man, it's so funny you say that about the subconscious, because as you were talking about that, I remembered a time I was in the woods when a few friends of mine, we shot a deer and we were trying to track it, and we were out at night in the woods. And I just remembered this. It just totally, I've never even thought about this until you said that. We were trying to track it, and it was raining, and there were 4 or 5 of us. We were looking for this deer, and stuff started moving all around us, but we couldn't see it. I mean, we were shining our lights on it. We could see the bushes moving, but we could not see what it was.
Okay, Joe, what just happened there is what happens all the time now with Ronny and I.
This is crazy, man. I got chills thinking about it.
I'm telling you, it's the synchronicity. It's these stories when people get together who have these stories, they come out, and then someone inevitably says, oh, you know what?
I totally forgot about
something
this.
happened to me. Yeah, really, it's amazing.
Yeah, I keep on hearing. It's awesome. I keep on hearing, like Matty said, we're talking to different people. Things will come out, but a lot of people have started reading the book and go, "Oh my God, I totally forgot about this whole experience." And even I just had another one yesterday where I realized something too that I had kind of totally forgotten about. And it's like, why is that? How does that happen? It's almost they need some kind of a trigger and the timing of that to kind of come back up. I think there's a reason for that, but it's always fascinated me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it plainly now, and I don't know why I've never talked about it on this show, but as you were describing it, I can remember everybody going, "No, it's got to be a hog, it's a squirrel, or it's something." But we had headlamps on, flashlights. We were shining everywhere, and we just couldn't see what it was. And it was around us. It was moving like fast all around us. Yeah, so we didn't find the deer. We got out of there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm gonna call my friends and ask them about that. Actually, that's interesting.
Definitely.
So, Matty, have you had any experiences yourself like that?
Yeah, Ronny and I are both experiencers, but mine's not cryptozoological. I have experiences in the more paranormal world. And that's kind of, again, why Ronny and I are kind of a good fit, because he can really speak very educated about that world, and I'm more in the kind of paranormal world. Started when I was a kid, my grandmother had experiences with a ghost. So from the time I was a child, it was kind of this Irish English lore in my head. So I was never scared or blown away by anything paranormal. And then I started having, predictive dreams when I was a kid. And it just was something that was a thread all through my life. Different types of paranormal experiences or ethereal experiences throughout my life. We kind of come at it from maybe perhaps two different, although Ronny, that's not true, because Ronny's had incidences in his personal life with his late sister.
Right.
So Ronny's maybe a perfect storm, if you will, of kind of everything. And I kind of am more on I haven't had a cryptozoological experience yet.
Not yet.
What do you mean by
the night is
ethereal?
young. The night is young, Joe.
Right. Well, it could happen any point in time, but what do you mean by ethereal experiences? You don't mind me asking.
Predictive dreams. I saw a full body apparition in my 20s. I was working in a home for boys. I guess it started when I was a kid. I had a predictive dream about a death of a pet, where I dreamed I was very close to a pet I had, and I went to sleep one night, normal night, nothing was wrong with the pet, and it was a bird that I was very close to, which sounds silly in a way, but I've since learned that a lot of people have kind of a psychic connection to birds.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to bed one night. I was about 10 years old. And again, understanding that my grandmother had talked very similarly about predictive dreams in her life and her mother back in the old country in Ireland. I went to bed, had a dream that my bird escaped in the school, and he died in the school. And I woke up in a panic, but also relieved that it was just a dream. And when I went to the bird's cage, he was dead on the floor of the cage. So I knew then that something was going on that was a little different than we can see. And that kind of just followed me through my life with different things, a million stories I could tell you. But then it kind of culminated in my 20s. I was working at a home for boys just outside of Boston. There were rumors of a ghost in the house, which I dismissed. And believe it or not, even with my background, I kind of dismissed it. And one night I was working an overnight shift, and I saw and heard a full body apparition go right by me in the hallway. I counted all the kids that were supposed to be sleeping. They were all sleeping. There was no other explanation. There was nowhere else the kid could have gone. And I realized in that moment that I saw this ghost that all my coworkers have been talking about for the years that I worked there. And that definitely, that more than anything, changed the course of my life in terms of this type of thing. Because I knew then that if that existed, then anything could exist.
So did you see this question? Did you see this out of the corner of your eye, or did you see it plainly?
That's actually a great question, Joe. I did see it going down stairs. So technically it was out of the corner of my eye, but it was solid.
Okay.
It was a full body apparition. It wasn't a wisp. It wasn't hazy. It was, hair, a body. It made noise down the stairs as it went.
Gotcha.
It was what I've since learned is not a ghost, but a full body apparition.
The reason why I ask that is because the only apparition I ever saw was out of the corner of my eye, and I saw. And my house is kind of small, and I got a hallway. And you guys are both telling stories that's happened to me. And I've seen it move. Everybody was asleep, and the weird thing is I just came out of a dream and had an out of body experience. So I'd woken up,
wow.
And I'd grabbed some coffee, and I was trying to write stuff down in my diary, and I sat down, and I seen it move. It wasn't just something that you think it was a trick. Right, because I seen it plainly move out of the corner of my eye, a white robe go down my hallway, and my heart sped up, because I called out to my son. I was like, Corbin, just thinking maybe it was him, and he was in his bed asleep. And I was like, oh, okay, I just saw something move in my house.
Yeah, it's funny. People sometimes say to me like, oh, I want to have an experience, and I always say, I hope you do, but also be careful what you ask for, because I remember that in that moment when I realized what it was, when I kind of put the math together, like, oh my God, I think I just saw this dead boy that people have talked about that I've worked with. I was so paralyzed with fear. It's a feeling I would never wish on anyone. It changed me. It definitely did.
That's the thing. I hear a lot of these people, because we talk about astral travel and out of the body stuff all the time, and some of these people are so calm, and they actually run into dead people all the time, and they help them move on. And I got to tell you, man, every time I've ever had some type of ethereal experience, the one thing I'm worried about is seeing something. It just freaks me. I don't want to see it,
Right.
Ronnie and I were just talking about that tonight. We were sitting out on the porch, and Ronnie told the story about going out somewhere around Monsterland and going, all right, come on, show me. And then he saw like a light or something and ran back inside like, okay, I'm good.
I literally, so I was in my house, and I'm not too far from Monsterland, but it was just kind of like, one of those things that you kind of go, okay, I'm ready now. Show me, take me to the next level. So I went out in the backyard, and I was like, okay, like literally said it out loud. I'm ready. Show me something. And I heard this, what was like a faint whistling, and it got louder, and then it was coming from the right. So when I turned to look to the right, this ball of light turned on, flew across my backyard, and then shut off. And I was like, hell no. I ran back inside the house.
So that's an orb experience. I have no idea what orbs are. I asked James Gilliland, and he told me that, they were spirits, but I mean, there's small ones, big ones. They come in so many different colors. I don't know how anybody can define this stuff so easily.
What's interesting is I had, again, along with, I was featured on Finding Bigfoot, or one of the friend of mine and his wife had found some tracks. So I had gone up and helped cast one of the tracks. So we had us on, and it was probably like a week and a half before the episode had aired in January of 2012, and I had my first orange orb experience where I had two of them flying over silently, the size of basketballs, looked like little suns flying over my car, and I was dumbfounded. I've never seen these things before, but then as I started digging a little bit further on the connection with orange orbs and Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and I was like, what the? It was just an unbelievable experience. And then I had, I've seen some smaller, white ones, but I've had about 7 or 8 orange orb sightings now since 2012. And every time it's just, you can't believe what you're seeing, and you always seem to second guess, is this a lantern? Is this something else? But they're unequivocally orbs. And some of them, the orange orbs I've never seen them really take off, super fast. They're very steady and silent. But I've seen some of the smaller white orbs kind of moving pretty quickly.
Have either of you gotten any close to answers on any of this stuff, like definitive answers? It seems like the more I look into this, the more questions I have. There's so many people out there that got, you know, they got so many definitive answers, but when you get to the real experiencers and real authors and, you know, people like even, you know, Nick Redfern, as much research as they've done, they still don't have hardly any answers when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, Joe, we asked Nick, in fact, a guy who we've established as one of the great writers in this area, and we asked him if he's had any experiences, and he said no.
Right.
So, yeah, the only thing I always say is answers, no, but I always say this, and, you know, I didn't invent the phrase. I think other people say it too, but I always say it. I don't know what it is, but it ain't nothing. It ain't nothing.
Yeah,
it all
that's
seems,
right. For sure.
You know what I mean? And it all seems to be somehow connected. The more you go down, like even the orange orbs thing, we interviewed on an episode that drops Tuesday, Dr. Lynn Katai.
Oh, nice.
And she talks about orbs in relation to the Phoenix Lights and how that might, a lot of people that saw the Phoenix Lights, a surprisingly large amount of people that saw the Phoenix Lights had near-death experiences and reported seeing orbs and floating beings. So I don't know what the hell this is, but it's something, and it all seems to be somehow connected the further you go.
And even the government now has came out, you know, everybody's talked about this and said, look, hey, there is something there. We're studying it. Here's some videos. To me, and you know what's funny about this, guys, is to me, I thought that this was going to be the groundbreaking, shattering everything. In our community, it was history. It was something that we've all been kind of waiting to happen. Maybe it didn't happen the way we wanted it to, but we've been waiting on it. And yet, in my community, in my little neighborhood here, there might be 3 people that actually know that they admitted it. That bothers me a little bit.
Yeah. You know what? And it's because everyone's still, you know, their face is smacked on their phone. And, you know, we could have aliens landing on the White House lawn and people would still say, oh, that's CGI and that's not real. So it's an interesting time. I feel like that we're going to start getting more and more kind of information and different things kind of coming out, I think, at a more quicker rate. So I think there's going to be a lot more for us soon.
Yeah, and Joe, some people believe that this is a slow burn, you know, that the government, if they are revealing this stuff, are going to do it in little piecemeal, little pieces. And so in one aspect, I feel your pain that I want people to freak out about this stuff. I want the masses to understand. But on the other hand, it might actually serve us that if this is kind of a test, if the government's kind of seeing how we react, and people aren't really freaking out about the fact that there's a tic-tac object flying faster than anything we know that can drop from 60,000 feet to 10,000 feet in 5 seconds. If people aren't freaking out about that type of stuff, then they might give us more. You know, if they're trying to measure how much we freak out and we're not freaking out, then we might get more.
That brings up a pretty good question in the Spreaker chat. BTO's asking, what's more important to you guys, the self-disclosure or collective disclosure?
Whoa.
So is it more important? That's a really good question. It's kind of polar, but it is a good question. So, like, is it more important for the individual to have something happen that shakes up their paradigm, or is it more important that it happens to everybody?
Well, I think that, you know, we talk about the collective unconscious, the collective conscious. I think that, you know, we need to almost have the individual experiences to kind of get to this groundswell, and then there needs to be an event that everyone is kind of, holy crap, you know? And I think something like that is coming. I don't know what it would be, but I think it would have to be some kind of, we're all watching this thing at the same time, almost like a 9/11 type event where everyone's kind of, everyone knows about it. And I think that's coming.
There's something there in all of this stuff, for sure. You're definitely right about that. I've been the skeptic about 2 big things, psychics and Bigfoot. Well, just the other day, I had another psychic on John Polk's radio show tell me that I was told me that me and my son were brothers in a past life, and that she saw us in, I guess, rebel uniforms in the Civil War, and that just shook me up because I've had other psychics tell me that. Now they may, you know, they don't know each other. a matter of fact, another person that told me this was just a listener that told me they had a vision about that. And I'm thinking,
my God,
that's awesome.
How is this happening? That's not a coincidence.
Right.
So,
at a certain point. Happens enough.
So that's the thing is like, it's cool and entertaining to talk about this stuff, and I love it. I love talking about it. I love hearing about it. But, man, dude, I really, really want to find the answers. And there's people that kind of go, well, that's not going to happen. Well, you know what? It may not, but in my lifetime, and I don't know about you guys and the reason why you're doing your podcast, but I can tell you part of the reason why I'm doing what I do is because I'm going to try, man. I really am going to try the best I can.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of that too is look what we're doing now, right? We're 2 podcasts talking about stuff together. So having that kind of collaboration with others, and I think, basically pushing this movement forward, I think is what's going to help this thing go to the next level.
So the Bigfoot thing, let's just jump into that real quick. This is my biggest doubt. Is Bigfoot. And I don't know why it is with all of the experiences I've had and all the stories I've heard. Why would I doubt it? But I do. And like I was telling you before the show, I don't think it's the Bigfoot thing that I doubt itself. I think it's just some of the experiences I've had with certain people that have kind of maybe ruined it for me, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah.
It's funny, Joe, as the non-Bigfoot guy, Matty here. It's funny you say that because the thing that compels me to believe in it is the witnesses. And I've never had a cryptozoological experience. I've never seen a Bigfoot or felt one, but I know Ronny here like a brother, and I know when he speaks about it, I can see the emotion in his eyes. I know the guys here in Massachusetts that we've interviewed who are not liars, who have, at the expense of their jobs and relationships, have said, I saw something and I don't know what it was, and it wasn't no bear.
Gotcha.
I believe it's actually it's not a cryptozoological entity. I don't think it's a great ape. I don't think it's North American great ape because I think we would have found something by now if it was. I do think it's paranormal, but I do think, and I think that's why it's so elusive, but I do think people are seeing something in the woods and it's big. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt Ronnie's seen anything, and I don't doubt that you trust his story. It's just like, I guess what I doubt is what people are, when they try to define it as Bigfoot, because you know what, like if you're right and this thing is, let's say it's interdimensional and it can really hide and it can do all this stuff, it's not a Harry and the Hendersons type situation. There's probably a lot more to this than we can imagine,
Well, Ronny can speak about the UFO connection.
Yeah.
Speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just in, for example, Monsterland, how it got its name is farmers in the late 1800s, 1884, watched a Bigfoot come out of the woods, grab one of their pigs and run back into the woods. Another one saw Bigfoot like rip one of the cattle to shreds.
Oh my.
And there was a guy that disappeared in the 60s that saw a creature and went into a bar and said he's going back. Wanted the cops to come and meet him over there, and they found his car. They don't find him. So that was kind of the legend of Monsterland. And so that Monsterland, the reason they connected, called it that is because of this Bigfoot connection, which I was like, Bigfoot in Massachusetts? I'm always thinking, Northwest. But as I was talking to other kind of old timers in the area, they're like, before it was called Monsterland, it was called the UFO landing area. And I'm like, what? And, we had UFOs coming, flying over. And so, I was doing all this different research, reading different books and, with stuff like Rob Riggs that has put together, and that connection to these special places, these sacred places that people have seen UFOs, but also there's Bigfoot encounters or people are seeing balls of light after a Bigfoot encounter. So there's this crazy kind of connection to these spots, and that just kind of lends to the whole interdimensional piece, right? I mean, that's why, people are chasing these Bigfoot. They follow the tracks and it just goes into a field and it just disappears. It's just almost as if it floated up into the air. So you have more and more of those stories. And I think the other thing is you look at the Bigfoot researchers that have been doing it for a long time. People like Kawani that's been doing this for over 50 years. There's no other, whether you believe it or not, the evidence kind of leads you down this path that says this isn't an animal. There's some kind of other interdimensional or other kind of paranormal qualities, aspects to this whole thing.
I believe that there's something to it. I know that there's got to be, because like you guys say, there's too many stories, man. You can't, it's just like UFOs. Everybody believed that maybe it was some type of occult-like thinking or something until the government. I mean, there's no doubting that now. So, I mean, we don't need, in my mind, no matter what I believe, we don't need some disclosure about Bigfoot. Just because disclosing what we've already seen opens up doors for so many different things.
Right.
I mean, ships that are defying the laws of physics, even though the laws of physics are changing every 20 years, that I feel like we're being farmed, man. And I don't mean in a bad way. It's just like I feel like there's all these different things going on around us because all these stories that are being told, what you guys talk about. I mean, if it was something evil and bad, I mean, it would have shown its ugly, evil face by now. So I got to think that there's something else going on. And maybe they're protecting us, maybe they're raising us, maybe they're just watching us. Man, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the people have had some Bigfoot experiences or encounters, even, habituators, excuse me. It's the equivalent to like the spiritual experience where they feel like they're being kind of, guided. And so you hear these different stories where it's not an animal, there are people, they have names. So a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to wrap your head around, but there seems to be a lot more of these type of stories and encounters that people have kind of held to their chest that are now coming forward with.
Just one, though. Like if I just see a Bigfoot one time, I got to think that I'm going to shout to the rooftops. I may be wrong about that.
Right.
But the more I think about the psychology of it, if I saw something like that, I'm not going to care what people think. I'm going to go tell everybody. And then that makes me think about the other people that are telling everybody,
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll still doubt it in your mind that you saw it. And then you'll probably even tell yourself, all right, just show me one more time and then I'll believe.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
Or, we're into this stuff, but you think about like some of these witnesses I was alluding to in Massachusetts that we talked to, like these guys are salt of the earth guys. They're working, they're outdoors guys. They spend most of their time outdoors. And if they say to their friends, their fellow blue collar workers, like, hey, I saw Bigfoot, they're going to get destroyed. They're going to get crushed. They really are, so it's a tough thing. I think a lot of people who have seen this type of stuff swallow it for a long time.
Yeah. Now, do both of you guys have kids? I know you do, Ronnie. Do you have kids,
yeah, we
Matty?
do.
I do. I have a son, Mad Max, 13.
What do you tell do your kids ever ask you about this stuff?
Oh, yeah. My, I sat on writing the book for a couple of years because of my kids. I really thought about, if I come out with this thing and I'm going to talk about my personal life, are they going to get made fun of in school? And, what are my friends going to think about? What are my parents going to think about me? And, even my wife initially, it was kind of a struggle to kind of even move forward with this thing. But you know what? Surprisingly enough, the city of Leominster, the mayor, people kind of embraced it. Matty AF, a lot of people jumped on it. And my kids have been, totally into this stuff too. But what's also a little crazy is it seems to has opened up some doors as well back home because my kids are starting to have some different paranormal experiences themselves. They're hearing their names being called, talking about thinking the house is haunted or seeing, ghosts and different things. So that's the other element where not just the ridicule from friends, but also opening them up to this other realm that, yeah.
We were recording, Joe, a podcast the other night, and we were talking about some paranormal things and some dark things in terms of, we got into Aleister Crowley and this lamb that he had manifested, and lights started getting weird in the studio, and Ron's wife, can I tell the story?
Yeah.
All right. Ronnie's wife texted him and goes, "What are you guys talking about?" Because as we were talking about this stuff, weird stuff started happening in his house with his kids. So we feel like we're stirring stuff up that maybe we shouldn't be.
Yeah. My second oldest daughter, she's 12. And now this has happened to her a few times where she's on the bed and the bed starts to shake and vibrate, like almost like an earthquake, like uncontrollably. And so at that moment, the bed started shaking, and she freaked out and ran downstairs to talk to my wife. Like, "Mommy, something's happening." And not 30 seconds later, my son, who's 7, said something whispered in his ear. And so he came running down, was screaming, "Mommy, something." And so she texted me like right away. She's like, "What are you talking about right now? The house is going crazy."
Yeah, see, that's a subject matter and the audience can tell you that I'm very familiar with, because I consider myself an occultist, not like an evil type occultist, but I believe in white magic. And Crowley, here's what Crowley did. And if you guys don't know this, I'm sure you do, but Crowley said his intentions were all good at first, but the more he started getting into these realms and realizing this stuff was real, the more chances he took, because he felt like, I want to get down to the truth of all this no matter what. Well, you still got to keep some type of moral compass when you do those types of things. So in my mind, and according to my studies, I really believe that Crowley and a few of his cohorts probably did open up some portals. Just saying.
Yeah, there's probably no doubt. If you do the timeline of when he was doing all that, and when we start seeing quote unquote UFOs and Loch Ness Monster, and it's pretty compelling to think that he might have ripped open another portal that might have been ripped open again. When you read the Bible's full of UFO encounters, quote unquote, and people being, struck down and converted and changed by lights in the sky, and so he might have been the kind of postmodern guy who ripped the veil of all this.
Well, as far as the subconscious go, the magician always draws a circle of protection, because the circle represents God. That's what it represents. Alpha and Omega, everything and all things, infinity. So it's the ultimate protection. Well, this guy would evoke entities and step outside the circle just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
So there you go,
And isn't it interesting that the entity he manifested, that he drew, Lamb, looks incredibly like what we now call the gray.
Right. Yeah, I've heard Jason Louv call it Lam and others, but the head is enlarged, and it's, man, there's something to that. There's got to be. And see, look, as bad as what he did, as bad as the guy, done stuff, I think that if you read his material, you're going to start finding some answers. See, I take the approach that, like, hey, I'm not going to do what this guy's doing, but I'm going to read this stuff to figure out what he was getting into. But there's this thing that happens when you start talking, when you start saying things with your mouth, when you start vibrating stuff. It happened with you guys, right? You're talking 100%. About it. And all of a sudden, this experience and this energy starts coming around, and kids are super, super sensitive to it. I can't tell you how many crazy things happened to me when I was a kid. I couldn't even cover them all.
Wow.
I wonder why that is, though, too. I wonder why kids are super sensitive to that.
Yeah, and some more than others. And like my oldest she's definitely like an old soul. And so and she's not afraid of it. She's curious. She's like, thinks everything is like awesome and wants to learn more. And so it's like her quest for knowledge, but also the fact that she doesn't really have any fear. I think she kind of looks at what I'm doing and be like, all right, Dad can do it. I can do it. And so that's very cool for me to see and kind of instill in my kids, no fear, go out, be a free thinker, figure stuff out. But then it is scary too, because you're kind of messing with something that, as you start getting into this stuff, they kind of, me and Nick had talked about this before, is like, once you start getting into this, they kind of know that you're looking at them and they start watching you, or, it's a crazy experience.
Yeah, everybody keeps telling me that. Be careful what you say, Joe. Be careful what you wish for. I want to see a UFO. I don't necessarily want to be abducted, but I want to see like a big UFO, not just a dot in the sky, zigzagging. I want the big experience. But then again, when I've listened to Travis Walton talk, you can tell to this day, man, it's still it's shaking him up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, Joe, have you had, like, you talked about a lot of earlier about OBEs and having different dreams and stuff. Has that been something that you've had as a kid as well, from the get-go, just really vivid dreams? Yeah,
when I was a kid, a lot of things happened that I didn't know if I was in reality or not. I still have the memories. I couldn't tell you if it was a dream or if it wasn't, but I also seen I do remember laying on a table, like in a hypnagogic state. I don't know why I can remember those dreams. Maybe because they affected me so much when I was a kid that I'll never forget them. So, like, I do remember laying on a table, as I was falling asleep, and then I woke back up, but I remember laying on a table. I remember being awake after that and looking at my wall and seeing these really tall, skinny legs going across my wall, bouncing off bouncing off the light from the backyard, but you could tell these weren't normal legs. These it was some bipedal, very long and lanky legs, and I would just run straight to my dad's room. I couldn't tell you how many times I ran into his room, seen little dwarfs standing in my doorway, all kinds of stuff, man. And it happens to my son too. He saw, he said he saw a shadow being out here on the corner of the house one time, and he screamed to the top of his lungs. And I went out there, and he was wrapped around a tree pointing at it, and I didn't see it.
It definitely seems like whatever and whoever this is, they pick certain people. Like Ronnie's definitely one of them. You seem to be one of them. It's amazing. Like we hear this all the time now, Ronnie. When I was a kid, I saw this. I felt like they were watching me. Abduction experiences, repressed. And now your son too. It's incredible.
Yeah, he don't like to talk about it too much. In fact, he don't really like talking about any of this stuff because he don't want to get freaked out, Yeah,
I'm sure it's so scary for some of the kids, It's
It makes me wonder, though, why we as adults, guys, that we dig into this. I don't know if it's because we're getting older and we're, the older you get, the closer you get to death. So you always wonder about the other realm. You just do subconsciously. And you just want answers. And then you see all these people, they go to these movies and everything's just to get the hell scared out of them.
Right. Yeah.
Why? Why are you doing that? And any shows, any music, even Ozzy Osbourne himself said they had a band or whatever, and they didn't even take off until they changed it to dark music, and it's like there's something weird about the humans and how we're attracted to this realm trying to figure it out.
Right.
Well, also, Joe, I would say that someone who went through what you went through as a kid, that's going to go one of two ways. You're either going to reject it completely out of fear and say it's nothing, it's all nonsense, I'm an atheist, nothing exists like this, it's bullshit, it's BS, or you're going to end up hosting a paranormal radio show and podcast. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's true, and it seems like the more people we talk to that have experienced something are digging deeper. Because they're like, what happened to me when I was 9, 8, 10, 13, 21, 25, Well,
then you get into the consciousness debate. And now we've got scientists like Thomas Campbell out here showing us that, and he's written three books about it. And, he developed the hemisync thing from the Monroe Institute. And he travels out of his body all the time. And he's pretty much telling everybody, look, we're just in one big ball of consciousness. I can prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you. Started a Kickstarter to do all these scientific experiments where he's basically going to show people that I don't guess you could say it's an illusion, but we're in this big realm of consciousness. And that's all it is.
One big projection.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with the double slit experiment. We talk about this stuff a lot here on our show, and what baffles me and what I'm learning to let go of, and maybe it's just because I'm 36, I haven't gotten to my 40s yet, but I've really got to start learning how to let go of people that don't care about it, they don't look up at the sky at night, they don't wonder. Why does that bother me so much? Why should I care that people don't do that? You know
what, and with that too, that. I agree with you. I feel like certain people, it's not their time yet. The timing of certain things where, it might be a year from now that they're ready to have an experience or something. But the whole synchronicity thing, the whole consciousness thing is definitely connected to all this. And the dreaming piece too, you mentioned about, I don't know why I remember those dreams so much, but I feel like some of these dreams aren't really dreams. We're really visiting other dimensions, whether through the astral body. Shamans talk about this, going to different worlds in the dream state. And I've had dreams that are just stayed with me. They're so vivid and real that you're like, that wasn't a dream. I'm convinced of it, even though I have no proof. I just know that I was somewhere else and not necessarily a real dream,
Well, look, when you're getting thrown around as a kid, like when I have a lucid dream and what I call an astral or etheric experience, the first thing I do is fly. I mean, I can control it. Right?
Same.
First thing I do, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm not in real reality. And then I just raise up like Magneto because it feels so cool, But
that's happened to me as well, where I'm in the dream and I realize I'm dreaming. Yeah. And I put my arms out and I just take off and and that's the first thing, I start flying. And I was fascinated by that because I feel like, we are truly spiritual beings, right? At our core. So flying is almost like a natural thing for us to kind of do. So when
doesn't it feel natural when you do it? It does, don't it?
It does. Yeah. It's weird. Like, how do I know to do this or even think to fly,
So check this out. When I was a kid, when you're a kid, you learn to walk, you learn to ride a bike, you learn to crawl, you learn all this stuff. But I think we learn how to do that when we were a kid too. And I don't know if this has happened to either one of you guys, but when I was a kid, I would have experiences. At first I would fly, and then all of a sudden I'd start getting whipped around out of control. And I could feel it, like I was getting jerked around, almost like when you're on one of those bad rides at a fair or something. I would fall. I would just fly out of control. And if you could feel that in your stomach, flying around like that while you're sleeping, how does that work? Right?
Right.
It's incredible.
Just trippy stuff, man. And I want to get into some more of this when we come back from the break. We got a couple of minutes here, like the Slenderman ordeal, because you guys, if you missed their first episode of Monsterland, they get into this with Nick because his book, and I've got his book here, The Slenderman Mysteries, really makes you wonder about what's going on in that realm,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did we create this thing? Has it always been there? Did it put its thoughts into us, and did we help it create, kind of like you see in all these different sci-fi movies and stuff? It's just, there's a lot to think about. And I think that sometimes, guys, that maybe one of the reasons why I'm not getting answers is because I'm all over the place. I'm not staying focused on one subject all the time.
Well, it might all come from the same place in a way.
Yeah, according to Tom Campbell, it does. It for sure does. Now, Ronny, when did you? How long ago did you write this book, Monsterland? When did it first come out?
So it came out in May of 2016, so over 2 years ago, and it took me a good, I'd say, year and a half, almost 2 years, just to write it with the research, and then sitting on it like, okay, am I going to do this? So it's been out for a couple of years, and it just continues to keep on picking up some steam. It's been a fun ride, and it's been exciting meeting Matty, and then we're looking at taking this to the next level. So.
Well, a podcast is definitely the next level because it helps you. I'm sure you were getting emails and messages from people from all over, I can imagine that happened.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Now, Gigi, I don't know if you're familiar with Gigi or Brian.
Oh, yeah,
is the
love
one.
Gigi.
Yeah, he's the one that said, "Listen, man, you got to talk to Ronny," and I was like, "Okay, I want to talk to Ronny," and it didn't work out. But now you're here, and we got Matty too. So see how that stuff works out.
Exactly,
things work out for the best a lot of ways.
Exactly.
But
it might have been just better without me.
No, man. I mean, no, you guys hooked up for a reason. I just really used to think in random and coincidence and just stuff happens that way. I really don't believe in that anymore. I really don't.
Ronny and I have had so many synchronicities and weird things since we started being together. It's incredible. It really is.
Here recently, or just as soon as you guys met?
As soon as we met.
Yeah.
There's been, I don't know, half a dozen at least experiences where we've gone like, oh my God, coincidences, synchronicities, call them what you will, but yeah, it just keeps happening.
Well, what I want to do when we come back from the break is I want to talk a little bit more about you guys' experiences, especially Ronny. I know we got a lot of time here, so I don't want to give the book away, but you guys need to check this out. Monsterland, the podcast, also Monsterland, the book. Interesting stuff. And I know you guys are wondering, well, are you convinced yet, Joe? The answer is yes, I'm getting more convinced, and we're going to talk about that. Don't forget the phone lines are open as well and all the chat rooms. If you do have a question, make sure you put it in caps or I'm going to miss it. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these words.
Since yesterday, they stopped counting by the last mile.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at UFOseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together we own the night.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. This is Spaced Out Saturdays with host Joe Roop. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void. And if you want to call into tonight's show, dial 501-777-5631. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, from the deep south of Arkansas, here is Spaced Out Saturday host Joe Roop.
Wow, thank you, Bob, for that so much. Who does voiceovers better than Bob? I don't think anybody does. What a great voice. You guys, welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I am Joe Roop. We are live on so many places right now. The Fringe FM, Spreaker, 107.7 UPRN, WQEE. Welcome everybody in there. If you guys got any questions in the chat room, just hit us up. The call-in number is 501-777-5631. We are here with Ronny LeBlanc, author of Monsterland, at RonnyLeBlanc.com. You can check him out. He's also co-host of the podcast, Monsterland Podcast, which is on www.pod617.com. And his co-host, Matty Blake, is here with us. And we've been talking all things cryptozoology, aliens, and UFOs. We're going down the rabbit hole with these guys. And they're starting to turn me into a Bigfoot believer, which is a good thing, believe it or not. That is a really good thing, because I think it's time. I think it's time that I go down this rabbit hole. And so... who better to do it with than you guys, right?
Love it. Good. Welcome to the club.
Here's the thing. I got to talk to you guys about these, what do you call, I don't even know the name of it anymore. It just jumped on the tip of my tongue. Now it's gone.
Synchronicities?
No. What they call Slenderman. These
Yeah.
thought forms that become real.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think they were always real? Like Slenderman. You guys did mention on your first show, and I never heard this before, but I really got to thinking about it. What if this thing was actually real and he helped us manifest them?
Yeah, it's the first thing I thought of, Joe, honestly, when I heard the story before I even talked to Nick. Not to get too deep into my story, but I come from kind of a Catholic Christian background here in Boston, typical cliche Irish Catholic. And so I've had experiences with my journey when we were mentioning earlier in the first break, some of the darker aspects of all of this. And so when I first heard the Slenderman story, I immediately thought demon. And when I heard that the girls in the stabbing stabbed their friend, I thought demon. And when I started looking into it and I found that it was a quote unquote creation by a guy on a website, I thought, well, I wonder where he got that idea. And then when we talked to Nick Redfern, he basically lays out the fact that a very similar entity to Slenderman is basically an archetype that has existed for a very long time in several different cultures over a long period of time, basically a faceless, elongated creature of some kind. So when a person, and again, not to say that the person who created Slenderman in that particular instance meant to do anything, but it does make you think, did he create it on his own, or was this an archetype that was kind of put into his head?
A tulpa is what they call it, right? Isn't that what they call it?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay, so yeah. Now, when we get into this discussion about consciousness, there are those that believe that the good and evil thing is just a paradigm. It's not real. It's actually a consciousness and awareness versus ignorance type thing. You know what? I have a really hard time believing that, guys. I believe real evil exists. I really do.
Yeah, I met a priest, Joseph, named Father Benedict Rochelle, who was involved with a lot of, I guess you call supernatural. He'd always explain to me that there's a difference between the supernatural and the paranormal, and miracles are very, very, very rare. But he said, if there is good, if a Christian believes in Jesus, then it might make sense that there is an opposing force of some kind, and that these things are very real and very dangerous. And I think, it doesn't take a lot of research to find out that this stuff does exist, and it can be quite dangerous for people.
Well, it's a touchy subject too. Honestly, it can get touchy because you get, and I hate Bible verses. I don't hate them, but I love them. I just hate talking about them, on radio because it's bad. But
yeah, it sounds like Christian radio.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you look at Isaiah 45:7, and it clearly states, no matter which way you look at it, he says, I create the light, I create the good, and I create the evil.
Right.
I, the Lord, do all these things. And you're thinking, why?
Mm-hmm. And for all the benevolence that we talk about in terms of, Phoenix, I said this the other night in the Phoenix Light episode, not to be controversial or anything, but it's like for all the talk of New Age and light, and I was shown something, we can't talk about that without bringing up the people who say that their abduction experiences were horrible.
Right. Exactly.
Because that's discounting them, that they feel like they were demons and they feel like they were tortured and they're, and the only thing that stopped them was the name of Jesus, things like that. And this isn't a Christian message. It's just, if you're going to take those other ones, the light, white brightness seriously, then I think you need to take those other people seriously too.
Right.
Well, I was on an episode here recently called Nox Mente. They invited me on as a guest to talk about that. And I had what was called a false awakening. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. Are you familiar with a false awakening?
No, I've never heard of that.
Well, when I tell you, you probably know what it is. It's a thing where you keep waking up and you think you're awake, but you're not. And you just keep waking up and waking up and waking up and in the same spot.
American Werewolf in London, the false dream sequence where he thinks he's waking up from the dream, but it's still the nightmare.
Right, exactly. So I was born a Christian myself. So when this happened to me, I kept rolling over and touching most of us do this. We wake up, we look at our phone, we use it for everything, and I'm tapping the screen and it goes out. And I'm like, okay, I'm not awake. And I could feel my eyes shaking as I'm trying to wake up again. I wake up, right? Okay, I'm awake. Tap my phone, not awake. I could have done, I don't know how many times I did this, but I thought I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I really felt trapped.
Kind of a loop. My God, I've never heard of that. That's incredible.
Well, here's the thing that these people on this show made me think about this. At the end of that sequence is when I saw that hooded figure. There was a hooded figure standing over me about 4 inches from my face.
Now that I've heard of.
Now, it wasn't until I got rid of that thing that I actually did wake up. And I used the ancient Hebrew name of Jesus to get it away from me.
Yeshua?
Elohim?
Elohim?
Yeshua is what I said, and I just vibrated it really loud, and it shook the room, and I could feel them move, and it got away from me, and then I actually woke up, and this girl named Nish that was on the show, she said, Joe, have you ever thought about, I'm not sure what she said, but I don't remember exactly what she said, but it made me think that this thing trapped me in that sequence. Whatever that was, whether it was a part of my psychology, whether it was an entity in a certain realm, I was going to stay there until I got rid of that thing.
My God, that's horrifying.
Jeez.
And this happens and I thought, okay, I'm crazy, right? I'm crazy. I'm talking about this. People are going to think I'm nuts. No. She showed me a picture of a drawing where the other people have seen these things. Exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
Hooded figures.
Hooded figures is I've never heard that in terms of the reawakening, the false awakening, but hooded figures with, incubus and succubus and all that, and shadow people, that's very ubiquitous. People seeing a hooded figure of some kind.
So Joe, was that the only time you had that experience, or have you had that multiple times?
I've had multiple experiences with shadow beings in those realms, but never, that was the first time I saw the hooded figure. And it was uncomfortably close, dude. Like, if you guys have ever been in a fight, you know what happens when somebody gets in your face. All right? So imagine how it automatically makes you feel uncomfortable, right? That's how close it was to my face. And all I could do was just jerk my head over, and just go, get away from me, like freaking out. Like, I was just like, oh, God, what is that? Right? And my heart started speeding up, and I'm saying, God, everything I could. And it just came to me. They said, the name to use. Something told me, and that's what I did.
Yeshua. And you in terms of that, you're in a line of people that have claimed that was the only name that stopped whatever it was that they were going through. Right. Whether they saw it as an alien abduction or a shadow figure or whatever. So it's something. I don't know what it is, but it's something.
And the weird thing was I could feel it move away from me, almost like we were like if you were laying in a pool and something moved, you could feel it too.
Like it affected the vibrations around you, the energy.
Yes.
Wow.
That's why I keep this.
Wow.
Why you keep what? You got something that protection?
I always joke with Ronnie when I wear a big, huge cross around my neck because of some of the things I've been through in this score. And I just, I'm not playing with this stuff.
And I think, I've heard of other people use different names and different religions, but that hooded experience keeps happening. But you know what? I think it works for me, and maybe it works for you, is because we were brought up that way. That protocol is inside of us.
Yeah, it's funny. Ronnie has something around his neck.
Yeah.
What was it, tiger's eye?
Yeah.
And I said to him tonight, it's funny, Joe, again, earlier before the show, I said, boy, every culture has their thing.
Exactly.
You're right. Yeah.
And I think there's something to that, whether you're, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, I think there's something to it where when you use what you were brought up with, what as the good force or God or whatever, it makes it go away. And I got to think it's got something to do with what Tom Campbell's talking about as far as consciousness goes. Like, what's really going on? I mean, are we just making up names and stories about this, or there's something there? There's something there for real.
Or it could come from whatever that divine source is, and throughout time, throughout human history, it comes in different forms to different people.
Another thing that bothers people, though, guys, is a thing I've talked to Xavier Hayes about and many others is that who we might be calling God or the creators might actually be aliens. And you might think, you laugh at that at first and you think, well, so what? What if they are? What if they're just super advanced alien species? It would make sense. It would make sense. But then again, you kind of don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that, but it could be true.
Well, yeah, and at a certain point, it's semantics in terms of,
right.
Well, let's go back to Christianity. Jesus ascends to his Father in a bright light after resurrection. That could be considered an alien event. Saul on the road to Damascus is he's killing Christians and he's converted because a light comes down. And he and his followers fall prostrate on the ground and become burned by a light that it turns out to be Jesus, converting him on the road to Damascus. The
Star of Bethlehem.
That's the Star of Bethlehem. These are UFO encounters, if you want to call them that. So yeah, I think it's not such a stretch to say that possibly our creators are quote unquote aliens. I think. You read the New Testament, it's like a bunch of UFO and alien encounters, really.
Yeah, or Daniel when they're talking about dream interpretation. See, the book of Daniel is just trying to tell everybody that, hey, the king was, I got all this power, and he gets all these astrologers and stuff. And I think that happens today. A lot of us, we got gifts and we use the gifts and we forget sometimes that there's just this source that it comes from, and that's what we need to recognize, that it's not really us, it's coming through us.
Right.
But I don't want to get too deep into religion because then you know how touchy that is, but it's tied together, man. You can't help but bring it up sometimes. It's hard to stay away from. Yeah,
well, you mentioned people becoming maybe uncomfortable with saying aliens or God or but it becomes semantics at a certain point. If you talk about beings in the sky, right?
Aliens, angels.
Right.
What I like to do is, if you get all the religions, and I say including Scientology and everything is great when you start learning the basics of everything, right? But then when you get to the big story, say for instance Scientology, what they teach in the beginning is just pure therapy, psychological therapy, right? They call it going clear or whatever. But if you can just pass all that and look at their big story, it's about Thetans sucking stuff out of your brain or something. They're not going to tell you that at first. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses, beautiful stories and everything. But then if you get to the higher teachings, well, Lucifer was Jesus' brother, and Jesus runs this planet, and eventually everyone's going to own their own planet, and you're thinking, why didn't you tell me this up front? It's not that I don't think it's true, but that's something that I wish I would have known beforehand.
Yeah. Well, the spark of it all probably comes from some sort of greater intelligence or divinity. And then when you start getting into that type of stuff, it's probably when men take over.
Right.
When man takes over and start, how can we make this ours,
Rewrites.
Right.
What I'd really love to see on you guys' show is like a Father Malachi Martin type. And someone that does exorcisms would be awesome.
We're on it. We're on it. I just said to Ronnie the night, I know a priest through Father Benedict Rochelle I was mentioning earlier, who we're going to talk about that kind of demonic side of it.
Yeah.
But listen, if I can be like Tom Cruise, I'm all in. Scientology.
Number Tom Cruise has got the ultimate life, at least from the outside looking in, he does.
It's unbelievable. He's jumping out of planes.
Yeah, there's something. I mean, but then again, Scientology goes back to L. Ron Hubbard, and L. Ron Hubbard was working with Crowley, and I've actually read the letter where L. Ron Hubbard he kind of made a bet with Crowley that he could make his own religion based on the mystery teachings. Right, yeah. And Crowley, and everybody thinks they were buddies, but then I've also read another letter with Crowley's signature on it, where Crowley was warning people about L. Ron Hubbard, saying that this guy is a con man, to stay away from him. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah. And then you look at the stadiums full of people that are following these things, and you're like, what? Okay, so there's like you say, Tom Cruise. There's some intelligent people in there, man.
Yeah.
So what's really going on?
it's hard to deny the success of the material success of some of these people. So it's an easy sell for them to put those people up front and go, look, ye too can be gods.
Yeah.
But earlier you were talking about, Ronnie, how I saw something and ran away. Like, I forget, I think it was an orb where you said you ran away from it. Have you ever, when you had an experience where you saw something like that and you just kind of faced it? Or have you always kind of freaked out? Because I always freak out. That's just me.
I mean, when I had the orb experiences, the orange orbs, I'm just fascinated and so transfixed on them. Like, I would not want to turn away. We went from our house, went to the Cape Cod for vacation. It's like a 2-hour drive. And the kids are in bed and me and my wife are out on the porch playing cards. And I just had this sense that I was going to see the orbs again that night. And I was literally waiting for them. And I'm facing the beach. She's facing me. So her back is to the ocean. And then sure enough, here comes one right over the ocean, another one following it. I'm like, Amy, turn around. She's like, no, she knew they were there. She's like, nope, I'm not, no way. I cannot believe that we're on vacation, And we turn around and we're watching them just going over the ocean, solid light. And I'm like, here they are. And what was amazing is I looked, down on the grass, and there was about 10 people there around a table, and they had cameras and binoculars, and they were watching the orbs flying over the ocean. And like, they're back. We saw these guys, saw them last night. What are they?
Wasn't this you?
And I couldn't believe it because what popped in my head was that they're from my neck of the woods. So I ran downstairs because I was expecting like a third orb to come, following the other two. And I was going past the group of people. They're like, what is that? I go, those are orange orbs. I said, hold on. I ran to my car and I had just printed out the book, Monsterland. So I brought it and handed them a book. And one of the kids saw the orbs on the cover and took off running and was just freaked out. And then I said, where are you guys from? They're like, Fitchburg. You'd never heard of it. It's Central Mass. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Leominster.
Right next door.
And they were all from the same, the odds of that happening. And, so we ended up talking for another half an hour or so after about all this stuff. And just weird how the timing of things are put into place and people are putting your lives in a certain time at the right time, So it's like certain things get unlocked and then you kind of go to the next level. And that's how the whole writing with the book has been, is just kind of someone's been guiding me down this hall and take a left here and open this door. You're going to meet this person that's going to take you to this next thing. It was just a crazy experience, and it still hasn't stopped. It's still, moving forward.
Can I ask you a quick question about the creative process? Maybe both of you could help me with this, because a lot of people have asked me to write a book about my experiences and stuff in the astral realms or whatever, but I've tried it, and then when I get to a piece of paper and I can't, it's just nothing. I could talk about it all day long, but putting it on paper, I don't know what it is. And I've looked into this. I've read Stephen Pressfield's book. Sorry about that. My phone just went off. I thought I turned that off, but all kinds of stuff. And what a lot of people are saying about the creative process is at some point, you have to let it come through you. It's not really you doing it. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely. There's, again, I think the timing has to be right. You either have to reach your threshold where you're like, okay, I'm doing it now, or there's some kind of inspiration or some kind of, one person can say just one, some words of encouragement that just kind of give you that energy to move forward. But I think it's really timing. I always knew I was supposed to write something important. I thought it was like a movie or something. I never thought it was a book. I never wanted to be an author. But it kind of went in that direction. And as I was just, I think when you start to write, you want to almost start right from the beginning. And that's not necessarily the place to start. It could just be that one story to kind of get you going. And then you're kind of building around it. So it's different for everybody. And I think just the timing will come when it's supposed to come. But I think the other piece is just really putting the time. I hated writing the book. It was not a fun experience. And when I finished, I was like, I'll never write another book.
Seems a bit painful, doesn't it? It does.
Oh, yeah.
To me.
Yeah. Because you are kind of like putting part of your soul on the paper and the words and those stories. And it's, I think the biggest thing is just you wonder what people are going to think or how they're going to respond. And if you can just shut that off and just turn on the faucet and like let it rip, everything will be good.
Interesting. Yeah. And I got a question here from Facebook Messenger, and this is a big subject that I talk about. We've already brought it up. Have either one of you had an out-of-body experience or near-death experience?
I've had several out-of-body experiences going back to when I was a kid, feeling that sensation of kind of leaving my body, almost like a swirling sensation, and I can feel my body almost hovering. A lot of times not be able to see, couldn't open my eyes, but felt like I was out of my body. And then a lot of these different dreams, vivid dreams that I've had, different experiences. But I didn't realize what they were, these out of body experiences, until much maybe 5 years ago or so, and kind of reading about them and go, oh my God, I've been having these since I was a kid. And I think it's been something that I've been afraid of for a long time, and then really trying to understand it now even more so.
And I did.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe. Well, I was going to say I did as a kid. I was sick one time, very sick, and I floated up what I determined outside my body and saw it, and I figured it was the fever dream of a sick kid until it had happened again and again. So I've also kind of traveled outside my body, and recently, Ronnie knows this, I've had my mother passed a couple of years ago, and she has been, I believe, and Ronnie does too, showing me things. What was the term you used? Was it astral projection?
Yeah.
Showing me things going on in my life and my family that, to spare you the long details, there's no other way that you couldn't explain it other than my mother showing me what's going on in my family. So, yeah.
Well, if you guys are into audiobooks, I highly recommend Robert Monroe's book. He's got 3 of them, but it's just a guy that got sick kind of like you did and had an out-of-body experience, and then Okay, so I'm going to admit something here while you guys are on here. There's two realms that I know for sure. I know. Okay, so there's the etheric realm where I can actually go to. That's where you can see yourself, like you guys are talking about. You're floating, or you're actually there, and it's kind of like this place. And then there's other realms, right, that you go to. And Bob Monroe talks about that. Like his first book, he talks mostly about this realm, about how he was actually going around to other people's houses and seeing what they were doing. And he would call them and ask them, hey, what were you doing at this time? He actually pinched a woman in his book and went and seen if she got pinched, and she did. And
wow,
that made me think all kinds of stuff, man. Like, okay, so I'm watching these videos on YouTube of paranormal activity happening in people's. How do I know this isn't some astral traveler just pranking somebody, just like
messing with you? Yeah.
And then in his second and third book, I hate to give away these books, but I think these books are life changing. And he starts meeting these people that he always knew, like his higher self and friends he's had through eternity. And when he came to this place, it's like he forgot who he was, that he went into this dense realm. And it makes me wonder about that, because I have constantly questioned that, guys. Like, is life a dream? Is this just something super hard to wake up from?
My son, who's 7 years old, literally 5 days ago, said to me, "Dad, what if life is a dream and dream is what real life is?" And I was like, "Whoa, man!"
That's what the Hopi would, they called it that. I've talked to Larry Scranton about this. That both him and I believe that they're dependent upon each other for some reason.
Right.
Do you ever meet someone in a dream, Joe? I've had this experience just recently, and you go to yourself, when you wake up, you go, I knew that person in my dream as intimately as I've known anyone. I knew their whole backstory. We had a cellular, how in 3 seconds in the dream state, you know this person as well and love them or like them or hate them as much as anyone in your life.
Absolutely.
Like, how can that happen?
Wait till you run into them in real life. Like you've seen their face, and you don't even know who they are, but you know them.
It's incredible.
Then I ran into a chick at a bar one time, and she was just a waitress. And as soon as I saw her, we both knew. I was like, I know you from somewhere. And she was like, yeah, but it's not from here.
Right.
And my friend that was with me, he's like, what are y'all talking about? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know, but apparently in this life, we're not supposed to do anything, or I don't know. But I've seen your face before, and it wasn't in this realm.
Right.
So, man, I mean, time is weird there. Everything is weird there. And that's why I tell everybody to get those books, because it was him and Tom Campbell, a scientist, that just showed up and was like, look, I want to prove this scientifically. And then it's just limitless from there. It's so limitless from there. I was even telling him how I can't get out of my yard when I ethereal project. Like when I've seen myself sleeping. I've went into my son's bedroom, and, I even talked to my dad once, went to his house and talked to him. My dad was a real smart aleck, though. I talked to his astral body, and I said, hey, Dad, look what I'm doing. And that's weird. You can talk to him like their dream self, but they're not going to remember it. So
right.
I talked to him, and I said, Dad, I'm out of my body. Check it out. And he goes, yeah? What are you doing? I said, well, I'm just standing here. And he goes, wow. Like being smart aleck, like my dad would.
Yeah.
And then I asked him the next day, I said, do you remember talking to me in a dream at all? And he was like, nope. But I know he was there. It was like a different person.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible.
When you go into a dream, I'm kind of taking over there. I'm sorry, guys. When you go into
we love it. We love it.
When you go into a dream, you forget. It's like you are a different person. You can totally forget about this life.
Yeah.
That's the trippy part of it.
You can and wake up and wish you were back in the other one. It feels like you belong more there than here.
Right.
When you're just in that post-dream state, that immediate post-dream state, you don't want to.
Yeah, you're disappointed.
Yeah.
Been there before, but I've also been super glad that I woke up.
Oh, yeah.
True. The converse is true, definitely.
Yeah, trying to finish that college course or whatever. I have those stupid dreams where you wake up and you're like, oh, thank God.
Or you're back in school. I've had that a million times. I'm back in school again. What is this about? Or someone's died and I'm really, really bad, heartbroken. Like I don't know how, and I wake up and I'm so glad that it didn't happen, which makes me wonder. You were talking about, I believe it was you, Matty. Weren't you talking about that you had predictive dreams?
Yeah, we opened with that. That was my first experience into all this. Is so when I was a kid, my grandmother, had talked about having a recurring dream where she would be carrying someone and she could never see their face, and she would be carrying someone and running with them, and within 24 to 78 hours or whatever, a few days after having that dream, invariably someone that she knew or loved would pass. So when she had that dream, she'd become very upset and become very sullen and silent. And, as the story of my family goes, like, oh, she had the dream and she knew someone would pass. And so I knew that. So when I had that happen with my bird, it freaked me out. Because I don't want this. I mean, I said it. I remember saying, I don't want this. Whatever this is in my family, I don't want it. I don't want to know when people are going to die. I was a kid.
I don't either, man. For real. Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Please take that away from me.
Yeah.
And then when you have that, and I'm sure you've had dreams about it, what do? Like you say it's a loved one or somebody down the road or something, and you had a dream that happened. I mean, is it your responsibility to try to help? I mean, do you say anything? What do you do?
Well, to be brutally honest, I think I did a really good job of shutting that off for a very long time.
Good.
And because I didn't want that. And now in my adult life, it's manifested in my mother, my recently passed mother, coming to me and showing me things. So I guess I've kind of backed back into it, and it's actually helped. It's amazing. Like so I've coined a new term, and it might not be a new term. Ronnie and I talked about this in the podcast the other night. I said, is this a thing you've heard before? He goes, I don't think so. I think this is your own term. So I'll debut it here tonight, Joseph, on your show.
Nice.
Empathy dreams. And what I mean by that is my mother is, let me think of an example I could actually say without giving up like a family. Okay. So recently, when she passed, this I can tell because it's personal, but it's not, it wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings. When my mother passed, I was holding her head, and my brother and sister were at her hands, and my brother was at her feet, and my father was, her husband of 50 years was holding her hand, and we were around her, as often happens in these situations, and it was a horrible and beautiful experience. And the other night I had a dream, and I was worried about my dad and kind of going through, discussions with my father, and I had a dream. Same exact situation, my mother passing, and I sat up and made an audible noise when she passed, and the sorrow I felt was so indescribable, and I realized the second I woke up that I was seeing her passing through my father's eyes.
Oh, man.
And I knew in that moment, and keep in mind, this is like the third or fourth dream I've had from my mother of these type of things. And I said, I knew right away, Joe. I was like, she is letting me feel exactly what my father felt when she passed, so that I can better understand the pain he's in now and better be patient with him and better help him. I just knew. I knew it was my mother going like, this is what he felt. Just
oh, my
so you
gosh.
know. Yeah. So I'm calling them empathy dreams. And it's like the third or fourth one I've had with. Yeah. So my mother's guiding me through this horrible process of life without.
You got a gift, my friend. Like you got. Well, I mean, it may feel like a burden, but that could be a gift in many ways too.
It's definitely helping with me deal with my father. No doubt about that.
Well, I would say that in Robert's first book, Monroe's book, and I'm not trying to tease you here with this, but I feel like I should tell you that when his father passed in that book, all he wanted to do was go see him again. And he did. He learned how to do it. And he saw his father, and he talked to him, and his dad was, and I don't know if you've seen this either, but he said when he saw his dad, he wasn't older in pain anymore. He was his young self. And it's weird. And these things, they're always their best looking self in there,
Yes. Yes. I told you that.
Weird.
Yeah. Mother. Yeah, that is. They're glowing. They're young. They're usually around 33. I've heard in their prime. Yeah, it makes sense.
So I'm not saying, hey, you can go talk to your mother, but I am kind of saying, hey, I would look deeper into that.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. I'm in.
I actually heard my mother on this show through an EVP once. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. Here's the thing. Bill Hauser is one of the biggest EVP guys out there. That's all he does. And they have shows on here, and I did one with him where we did EVP sessions. And, the thing that runs radio stations, or it sounds like a bunch of radio stations. Now, I was a very big skeptic of this, and I didn't tell Bill. But I heard my mother on there, and everybody was here and heard it. And I went dead quiet because I was so choked up. I know what my mother sounds like. It's very distinct. And, she passed when I was 13, but I heard her, say, hi, baby. And I went back and recorded it and, took the waveform out, listened to it very slow, and just reanalyzed it. Because like you said, maybe it was in my mind. You tell yourself that. But right now, I don't believe that. I believe it was her.
That's amazing.
That's incredible.
You still have that file, I would imagine?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely do. And
that's incredible.
I didn't have a very good relationship with her, but I always felt angry with her. Like, why did she abandon me? Why did she screw her life up? Because I was raised by a hard Arkansas guy. You know, it kind of sucks when you don't have a female person in your life ever. You know, it's that person that you can go to and say, "Oh, it's going to be okay." No, I didn't get none of that. I got stop feeling sorry for yourself and shut up. That's all I ever got. You know. But anyways, I was just wondering if you guys have ever had, or what you guys' thoughts are on the EVPs. Not EVPs, but I guess maybe how they do it through those machines.
You know, I find that interesting with, it's funny, I just remember like I think it was like a Ghost Hunters TV episode where they were in a room of a 1800s house, and they're recording EVPs, and they're talking, is anyone in here? And they didn't hear it at the time, but they played it back after. But you could hear the disembodied voice say, "I can hear you, but I can't see you. Where are you?" And I was like, whoa, it was almost like they were on, in that same space, but it was almost like a different time, talking to this ghost or the spirit or whatever.
That's pretty crazy. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Right. And I was just like, whoa, could this be like back in the 1800s that she's hearing their voices talking to her and she thinks there's a ghost? You know what I mean? So there's like this time and space, the whole thing kind of goes out the window, and that really threw me for a loop when I heard that, and I was like, wow, that is pretty.
That stuff freaks me out. I start thinking like, wait a minute, are they trapped? I thought they were supposed to go on to heaven or something. Like, what?
Right?
Are they trapped in this thing? And you can go to the MonroeInstitute.org and listen to people talk to dead people in there. They got plenty of audio clips, and there's so many souls that are just trapped. Like they don't even know they're dead, and they're just waiting for something to come around. And there's always somebody that comes by, or I guess you could say an angel or a guide that eventually grabs them up, but they have no clue they're dead. And even when they do know they're dead, they're just trapped, or they don't know what to do. And that is, man, I'm telling you, that is probably the scariest thing I think about. I don't even like talking about it, but I know it's there. It's too many stories about it.
Right.
That's horrifying. Maybe that's what we call hell, that just not. I heard a very compelling one on one of those shows too, Ronnie, where I remember distinctly, and some of your listeners might remember this episode too, where they were at, a Civil War site, probably Gettysburg, and they captured one, and the guy was basically saying, talking about digging a trench, and he was like, "I'm going to dig it deeper," and they kept, and they had what made it so compelling was they had a linguist, like who was an expert in how the Southern accent back then would have been pronounced, and it was like accurate to how a person back then would have said deeper, and they kept replaying, and I just always remember being just chilled by that. Like, if you're going to fake an EVP or whatever, like, how would you know how they would pronounce, in Civil War time that? So yeah, though, I think they're amazing.
See, and this is what I mean. Paradigm shifting stuff, and I know we're all over the place right now. Does it feel like, with all of the subjects that we've talked about, does it feel like there's any way to get answers? These people aren't listening to these shows and podcasts. I'm sure they are for entertainment reasons, but I got to think that all of these people out here want answers too.
Right. We're all trying to seek, we're all looking for the truth. And I think it kind of manifests itself on the personal level, but I think people are looking for the global kind of, because we don't know where we come from. We don't know where we're going. And that's the two biggest mysteries, and we're still trying to figure that out,
Yeah, I get kind of jealous of people that say they got it all figured out because they have peace in their mind about it that I don't have. But then again, the part of me is like, okay, you know it all. I got you. You know how all this stuff works, right? Can you tell me what's on the other side of a black hole? And believe it or not, they'll try to explain it. It's like these people that have to know everything, Yeah. And I'm like, this is so counterproductive. Why am I even doing this? I've been in so many internet battles. It's ridiculous. I think it's time to grow up. I got to get away from all that. I'm not going to get any answers doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's also
Twitter's terrible, by the way.
What's that?
Twitter is awful, but you can get in some real gnarly scraps on Twitter.
So negative. Yeah, there's a lot of haters on Twitter. Absolutely. Trolls, like they just exist to be negative. Yeah. But I think there's also, it speaks to like two different types of people in a way. There, two constitutions, if you will, two basic types of looking at the world. And like, for an example, I host this show Drilling Down on history, which is a companion show to The Curse of Oak Island. And so I'm always answering fan questions about The Curse of Oak Island. And to make the larger analogy, there's two types of Oak Island fans, the people who are obsessed with finding the answer of treasure. Like they haven't found anything. What's on the island? I want to know. Here's my theory. Here's what it is. What's there? And then there's the other people that are enjoying the search. They're enjoying the journey. They're enjoying the relationships between the brothers. They're enjoying the entire excitement of trying to figure out what's there. And I think that's kind of also similar to all the answers to all these questions. There's people who enjoy the search. And I think Ronnie and I fit into that category. And I think you do too from talking to you tonight. It's exciting and fun to talk about this stuff.
But I do forget about that sometimes. And I think a lot of us do. Yeah. That we want to get answers about the afterlife and everything, and even me, I think I've heard the old broke down thing from my grandparents because they're old Christians. Oh, I can't wait till the Lord takes me from this world. I can't wait. Right. I'm like, wait a minute. What if life is probably the greatest thing going in the universe right now? What if we got it backwards?
I think that is the case. I feel like we are. Earth is some kind of like school. And there's, death is, you go into another dimension. And I think that this is kind of like, to get to that next level, you gotta pass. Or you coming back here to kind of repeat until you do.
Yeah. Do you guys both, I mean, obviously you probably do. Do you buy into the reincarnation thing?
Like yourself and Matty, I was brought up Christian, born again Christian really when I was young. And then when I moved to California, I started getting into Buddhism and Zen and reading about Eastern philosophy. And it's just one of those things that at first I was kind of like, no. And I think that's more of the Christian upbringing saying that doesn't exist. But when you look at the concept of reincarnation and think of nature and how the seasons, they all kind of repeat and they, water, how water is kind of recycled. And I know it takes a while for that to kind of all come together, but it's a natural kind of thing. So why wouldn't souls and spirits kind of be recycled as well?
Birth, death, and resurrection process. It's in everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for me, Joe, it doesn't even conflict with my Christianity because, like you told that story about the girl at the bar and, who's to say that there's only an infinite amount of souls that you're going to connect with through all your lives and keep, maybe your wife in one life is your sister in the other or whatever. And we just keep recycling. To me, that doesn't preclude the fact that there might have been a Christian story, because Jesus might have done what he did. It doesn't mean that we don't recycle and learn lessons. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I think there's a lot that was left out, I mean, come on. No, we only got, here's where he was a kid and here was and that's in every religion. You get parts of the story.
Right.
Where's the rest of it? Come on,
Well, I've always been fascinated with Jesus Christ and the fact that I'm like, man, he seems like he's like a Buddhist monk. Mm-hmm. Like there was a lot of different elements of Buddhism and stuff that seem to be taken out of Christianity. And it's interesting now. I think there's a documentary that came out about Jesus being this Tibetan monk named Isa or something, and that kind of piece. So that's always interesting to me. But yeah, there's that missing time from what he's 13 to 33, 20 years or whatever it was.
Renee Blake says, "Okay, I love these guests." Well, you can. They're gonna have more shows, right? So, you guys are doing the YouTube thing too, which I'm not a big YouTube guy, but I really kind of like what y'all are doing there. You got some good nostalgia going.
Yeah, they're being filmed, so we figured throw them up on YouTube too for the people that don't listen to podcasts. They can at least watch us on YouTube.
Well, we got to do this. I got to talk about it, man. So let's do this thing. We already talked about Bigfoot. What about Dogman? What do you think about that?
I've never had any type of experience, but I think that that is interesting because I've read and seen people talk about, oh yeah, I've been feeding the Dogman, leaving food for him just like Bigfoot. And yeah, they could tear you up in 2 seconds type thing. And it's tough because I feel like it's, they talk about the Rougarou, right? Down your neck of the woods.
Wait a minute. What is that? What are you talking about?
What they call it, the Rougarou? Is that another name for the Dogman or the Wolfman?
Yeah. I've heard that name before here, but I haven't, like I said, I'm just getting into this crypto stuff. So
yeah, you
might have to fill me in on a little bit of this.
Well, I guess like Kat Hansen has talked about the Rougarou, which is the kind of like the Dogman, kind of like this wolfman kind of thing, and similar to Bigfoot, where they can kind of traverse through this world and the spirit world. But it seems to be that people are having more encounters with Dogman.
Rougarou is French for werewolf, Joe says in the chat.
Right.
Well, look, okay. The reason why I ask is I grew up in Arkansas. I've been here my whole life. And when I've talked to Dark Waters and I've listened to these other stories, and you know what? A lot of these stories are coming out of the neck of the woods where I'm at, okay? And there's been zero good stories about Dogman. This thing isn't cool, And as far as trying to help people, it's always some terrifying experience. Now, if this thing is real, like, they're saying, I shouldn't even go out in the woods. If I know that it's real, if I ever come to know that Dogman is real, I probably won't go out in the woods alone. Definitely not without a weapon, which I never really have anyway. So that's part of my upbringing. But I mean, I don't know. When I go out in nature, it's like crickets and squirrels, and it's beautiful. And, I hear all these animals, and it's just lovely. To think there's some beast out there with red, beady eyes, and that's just ready to rip me to shreds or eat my cat. I don't know, brother. That one's hard for me. Bigfoot, Joe, I'm a little bit more about, but.
Have you seen the video? I don't know if you've seen this, Ronnie. We just watched it in show prep, like literally the other day. A guy, basically what could be a Dogman, possibly like attacks his dog.
Oh no!
No, I haven't.
Yeah. God, I'll find it. It just came out the other day. I guess the video itself is 2 years old, but the video was kind of released just a couple days ago, and it shows a guy, a handheld, kind of mini cam probably, and his dog's barking crazily at something, and all of a sudden this thing stands up, and it's big, and it kind of looks like a hybrid dog wolf, but it towers over his dog, which in the video, he says my dog's pretty big, and this thing chases his dog, and you hear the dog yelping, and the guy goes, hey, and drops the camera and run. But it's pretty frightening video.
Yeah.
I'll get you the link, Joe. Yeah, I just found it literally 2 days ago. I'll send you a link to it. But man,
it's probably from your backyard, Joe, too.
I know it probably is, right in the neck of the woods of Arkansas. I keep hearing that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think I've also heard where Dogman is seem to be found around portal areas too. So areas that have portals, they seem to be either coming in and out of those, or they're there to kind of like protect those areas from people going into them. I don't know.
That is something else I was going to talk to you guys about. We only got a couple minutes till the break. Are you guys going to hang for the last part of the show, or do you got to go?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, because I know it's late there. Hopefully you guys aren't running out of beer. God, I could use a beer. Well, somebody send me a beer, please. Nice
so you can the Dogman link. Astral beer.
Anything. When other people start drinking beer, I want to drink beer, especially I love Mexican beer. I don't know why, but that's my favorite.
Dos Equis.
There you go. You just named my favorite beer. That's it. Dos Equis. I don't know why. Maybe we just don't make good enough beer, but this has been a really fascinating, interesting conversation. Before we go to the break, though, let's just once, I'm sure we'll do it again, but can you guys tell everybody where they can find you on the web?
Sure. Yeah. So Monsterland Podcast, we're on YouTube. You look up Monsterland TV. If you want to get the podcast, if you don't have iTunes, we're on iTunes, but you can also find us on SoundCloud, Pod 617. We also have a Facebook page. We're on Twitter. So it's Monsterland Podcast on Facebook, and Twitter and Instagram. It's at Monsterland Pod.
And you got the big eyes, those monster eyes. That's pretty cool for the logo type thing. I like that. Took me forever to cut that out, by the way. So, you got a good logo when it becomes a 4-hour project for somebody else to try to paste it on something.
Well, you did a great job. It looks great.
But yeah, there's so much I want to talk to you guys about, and I think that sometimes we get audience participation. I'm hoping somebody will call in and convince me. But you guys have done a good job about Bigfoot. But we'll go into the other stuff too. It's just. I don't know. I got to see it. I want to see one. And that is something else that I'm going to ask you guys about. What can I do to possibly, or where can I go to see this stuff? Or is that even possible itself? You guys, please don't go anywhere. We got one more section left of this show. We'll be right back after these words.
And the broken saints are walking in their sleep since yesterday.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Let us play with all our joy.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Want more information about our programming? Check out spacedoutradio.com. You can follow our host, Joe Rube, on Twitter at Lighting the Void. Call in to tonight's show at 501-777-5631. Now, entering the radio ring from Arkansas, Spaced Out Saturday host, Joe Rube.
Yeah, that is the number, 501-777-5631. Thank you, Bob, for calling that out. We're here with Ronny LeBlanc. And we are here also with his co-host, Matty Blake of the Monsterland podcast. And we've been talking all things cryptozoology, UFOs, the unexplained, And we're also talking about the launch of their podcast as well, and a lot of synchronicities we've talked about. Now, here's the thing. It's the last part of the show, so I want you guys to participate. I know you don't like doing that, but if at the very least, ask some questions. You could call in. I can see several listeners out there. Tell me your story about Bigfoot or Dogman. I'm not going to judge you, but I want to hear it. And the number is 501-777-5631. You can ask Ronnie a question. You can also ask Matty a question. They're not shy, so if you want to call in, go ahead. Some nights people call like crazy, and some nights they just don't. So I know you're used to the phones blowing up, though, working a regular radio, though, aren't you, Matty?
100%. Sometimes they can derail a show, though, Joe.
What do you mean? Tell me.
Well,
school me on this.
Well, it's funny. Callers are a tricky thing because you want to be a voice for the community that you're in, but also you can get a roll going, and have something nice going, and you go to the phone lines. You're like, all right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to the Framingham Ford studio line in our case. And then someone's like, yeah, you guys, and you're like, oh, wow, that just killed all our momentum. Thanks a lot, caller.
Yeah, I don't know. I read a book called The Art of Talk, not The Art of Talk Radio. That's Art Bell's book, but it was a different book. And Phil Hendry talked about that. He was like, you can't let callers run your show. And he would give examples of some people just calling in and totally just crashing his show. And and you feel like, you feel so bad because you got to hang up on him. You can't let that happen, and you got to hang up on him. So, and he doesn't feel bad at all. He's like, yeah, well, whatever. Thanks for calling. Bloop, and just hangs up on him like, I can't do that. I don't know why I can't do that.
And you can make fun of it and have fun with it. That's where, and you have a good call screener is worth its weight in gold because so my call screener's back in a studio, behind, I can see him through glass. And he's typing on our call screener software, and when you get a good rapport with the call screener, he knows what you want and what you don't want. So I'll see on the call screening software, Joe from Southie, definitely take this, or Ellen from Boston, do not take.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Or I guess the one thing that kills me is the 10-minute. They want to just talk and talk and talk, and it's so weird when the phones, like on this show, when the phones start ringing, then everybody calls in. And then I get this one guy talking forever, and I'm like, look, I gotta get to these other people. They're calling in, But BTO's asking, do the guests feel that Sasquatch are only natural, but also hybrid ETs and interdimensionals? I think we kind of touched on that, but you can go ahead and answer the question if you guys like.
Yeah, I really do believe that they are interdimensional. There's stories of them working with the Greys on certain aspects. So I definitely don't think they are an animal. I think they are definitely interdimensional.
We did a appearance at a local. There's a group around here called Squatchachusetts. It's basically the local chapter of the BFRO here in Massachusetts, and they had a little conference, and we spoke at it. And I asked the question of the room. There was about 200 people there, you think? And I asked who here believes, Sasquatch, Bigfoot is a strictly biological entity, a North American undiscovered great ape, and the hands shot up, kind of all these outdoors guys, outdoorsy type hunter guys, hands went right up. And I said, who here thinks maybe that it's something interdimensional or paranormal or not cryptozoological? And, you maybe 3 hands went up, and I felt like more hands believed that, but you could see the people that raised their hand kind of looked around the room like, can I do this right now without getting?
Like they wanted to, but they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are starting to kind of believe there's something more to it, but it's a stretch to say to someone, I think there's an interdimensional ape running around the woods.
You're trying to get them to believe in Bigfoot, but then, and by the way, he comes in through portals.
Yeah.
You want to know what else happens too, man, is the friend. This is the one thing that frustrates me more than anything is the friends that I've had these experiences with. And these are friends that go back from high school, and they're like, oh, yeah, I've heard your radio show before. That's cool. Blah, blah. I'm like, hey, man, do you remember that time we got out of the car and we heard those children laughing in the woods? No, I don't know what you're talking about. Like you were there. You were there. You don't remember it. You know, so they kind of poke at you because you're talking about crazy stuff, but they don't remember the experiences that you had together. So I'm wondering if they've blocked it out of their mind, like you guys are talking about. Maybe they told themselves it didn't happen, or they just don't want to admit it.
Right.
Yeah, like how much of that is I don't remember, and how much of that is I don't want to remember.
Yeah, a lot of it too is like, you know, you wonder if someone is blocking it for them to, you know, think about it at a later time too, because just like you know on the show, right, with us, Joe, right, you remembered something that you had totally forgotten about.
Yeah, I did.
Not like you tried to, but somebody else wanted that buried until a certain time to pop up again.
Well, it was when he described the bushes moving and the sounds and stuff, and I was just listening intently, and it triggered that in my consciousness. Like, I remember the same thing happening to me at night in the rain. Then it triggered, oh, yeah, remember? You guys couldn't find out what it was. Everybody was looking for it. Nobody saw it. Didn't that ever register? Well, it did now, you know.
Huh.
But they all thought it was, well, it's some kind of animal we couldn't see. No, there's no way, man. There's just no way, because it was all around us and close. Like, if I can explain it this way, you know how you hear bushes and trees rustle, right? Well, these bushes and trees were rustling 10 feet away from us, and they would come at us as if it was attacking us. So you could see the trees and the bushes move around and get closer to you, but we would all shine our light on it, and there's nothing there. And then it was behind us, and we turned around, did the same thing, nothing there. And they all kind of forget, hey, we left the woods because it freaked us out. Don't you remember that part? No, I don't remember that part either. Okay, well, I give up now. You know?
Whoa.
Wow.
Scary.
Well, or the classic. Well, weren't we stoned when we heard those kids laughing in the woods? Yes. I mean, I was in high school and we were stoned, but we were out in the middle of the woods. But we all three heard kids laughing in the woods all around us.
Ugh. Yeah, you want to. You in a situation like that, you want to find reasons to be anything but what it might be. You know,
right? I just remember Brad going, you know, what the hell is that? And he was laughing too because he was stoned, and he was like, "Do y'all hear that?" And I said, "I absolutely do." And we just got in the car and just fled. But see, back then, I had no idea I would even care about that stuff. I didn't even think about that stuff back then.
Right.
So now that I'm looking for it, I'm extremely frustrated. It's like there's no payoff. I'm like, you know, I got to talk to people that have, you know, guests that have had experiences. Like, I want to see a Bigfoot. I mean, maybe not up close, maybe not so close that, I mean, I don't think it's evil. I just want to see one. That's all it would take.
Joe,
I would shout to the rooftops.
Do you meditate, Joe, or have you tried meditating?
Well, I got to tell you, I used to meditate like crazy. And now I'm constantly working on the shows, this show or my other show or the network. And when I get time to myself, the next thing I know, I'm waking up because I've just passed out, you know, and I've got to get back to that, doing that again. Why do you ask? Do you think that would help?
Well, I feel like for me too, it's something I used to do a lot, and I've kind of just with the hustle and bustle of daily life and kids, I kind of lost that. But I found that when I was doing that, I was kind of more in tune with these synchronicities, but I also felt like when I was doing that, a lot of stuff was happening. And I feel like whether it's just kind of, you know, having your brain kind of in sync with this stuff so you pick it up when it does happen, but it seemed to be like it helped with that connection of with Bigfoot. And a lot of people that I've had, you know, talked to that have had similar experiences talked about, I was out meditating in the woods and all of a sudden this happened, or I was meditating hoping to have an experience, and the next time I was in the woods, I saw one or I had this experience. So I think when we talked about consciousness, I think that kind of does play a part with all this.
I think you're spot on with that, man. I really do, because when you start triggering your consciousness, that's when things happen. And we get this idea that these beings or whatever, they're just something totally different than what we're connected to. But now hearing you talk about that, I got to think that it's all connected. Again, we're back to that, right? It's all connected.
Right.
And I, as you know, being in I guess you could say an armchair occultist, because I've studied the stuff in these magical schools, the first things that they tell you to do in the beginning and I'm not telling any of you guys to do this, I'm just letting you know for educational reasons, is they teach you meditation and focus. They'll actually tell you to stare at a dot for hours, as long as you can stare at it, and just practice focusing your mind or visualizing things in your mind. Like, why can I smell a rose just because I'm talking about it, but there's no rose around? Don't you ever wonder about that?
Yeah. Definitely.
Doesn't make sense. But the magicians use that stuff in ritual, and then they trigger stuff, and then they open portals. And now we're talking about what's coming through the portal. So don't go out there and do that. That's not what I'm telling you guys to do. I just think there's something to it. You know? There's got to be. I mean, I'm going to make it a point to do more meditation. Even if I got to wake up early in the morning to do it, you know,
right.
You're totally right.
Even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I just notice, like even today, just kind of outside sitting on a chair, just closing your eyes for 5 minutes, just to let your mind settle, but then to kind of like, okay, intention, kind of throwing that out there. And but I just notice a lot more activity when I'm kind of in those states.
Right. Well, there's a website that I go to a lot. It's called sacredtext.com. I don't know if some of you are familiar with it. And it's got books about every lore and legend there is, and it's just like an archive full of this stuff. And there's a huge rabbit hole of, you know, they talk about elemental spirits, gnomes and fairies and sprites and elves and stuff, and you think, what a joke. But you get to reading it, and it's like, maybe there's something to that. Do you guys ever get into any of that, the Celtic stuff?
Yeah. I mean, there's been talk, too, that Bigfoot is an elemental, you know, part of Earth. And so, it's interesting because a lot of that stuff that you kind of, this is all folklore and fable, then you kind of like, well, people are having these experiences, like you mentioned earlier in the show, seeing some weird elf-looking creature, you know, by your doorway.
It was a big, fat, dwarf-looking thing. Ugly.
And, you know, my daughter, too, like by my parents' house, they live on the foot of Bobcat Mountain, which is kind of connected to Leominster State Forest. And she saw some kind of red-eyed being that was like short, like kind of peered around the house, and she was screaming, similar to like your son kind of seeing something. So I think there, at some level, all these things exist, whether that starts with a figment of our imagination and then they're created because people are passing on these stories, kind of like Slenderman, or that they're really in this other dimensional realm and that we kind of, the veil thins from time to time and we actually see these beings. What do you
do, Matty, when you get scared? When you, as an adult, because I know it's hard for us grown men to say, I'm not scared of anything, right? But when you encounter something that actually scares you, do you go straight to your religion? Do you pray, or do you just tell yourself it's not happening?
That's a great question. Well, the short answer is the latter. Like like I said earlier, you try to, I think, go to excuses, rationalize, like, whoa, no, it couldn't be that. No, it's not that. It's not that. But yeah, I think I would immediately escape to, if I felt like I needed to be protected, I would go to the religious aspects of that which I feel protects me. I had an experience, Ronny knows about this, where when I was kind of being reconverted back into Christianity, I did a kind of a long spiritual search, tried Buddhism, Taoism, every ism. Just didn't want to go back to the church of my childhood because I thought that was too cliche and make me not an intellectual, which I didn't want. I wanted everyone to know how smart I was. But I ended up back kind of in the church with which I was brought up in the long run. And right around that time, I really did. I had some dark things start to happen, kind of culminating in what I believe to be well, we don't know what it is, Ronny, right? I mean, it could be a black-eyed child type of thing. Although I never saw their eyes, but I was harassed by a group of what I thought were kind of teenagers in a movie theater that I couldn't see behind me, almost like a trickster element, and they stole my phone, which I don't know how.
You felt the evil, though, didn't you?
100%.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They started throwing stuff at me in the theater, and which is a long way to answer your question. That I immediately started. Yeah, I started praying. I went to my religion, and and when Ronnie and I kind of in the journey of this podcast stir this type of stuff up, when I start to feel a little spooked out, I would immediately turn to this cross that I wear around my neck. So yeah,
man, I see. There's another thing, man, that just triggered one of my experiences, but I want to ask Ronnie first what he does when he gets afraid. Do you do the same thing?
I do. I automatically try to control my breath. That's one of the first things you can do that anywhere, and to slow down your heart rate. But most definitely, just growing up in the church, I feel like I'm closer to God than I've been before, and through all these different experiences has kind of brought me there. So I feel like if I do get in those kind of feelings of, man, there's like that evil or that kind of I need protection, then I'll definitely kind of talk to God in my mind or call out. But a lot of times it's starting with the breath and just kind of like, okay, what's going on here? Try to rationalize first.
I don't see anything wrong with that, because even as an occultist, like reading this stuff, some of the best, I guess you could say, Christian mystics, alchemists, magicians, at the end of their journey, they were still those things, but a lot of them converted back to Christianity, even Catholicism. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't stop, researching and talking about these things, but they reverted back to their religion. So, and what I've found is that every religion has a mystery to it. Like, Christianity has Christian mysticism. It's got a mystery to it. The Muslims got Sufi. The Jews, they got Kabbalah. There's always this mystery thing behind it. But what happens at first is you just want to totally say, well, I figured it out, right? These are metaphors, and I figured it out, so I'm beyond that now. Yeah. But you forget the power of what it actually does in your life sometimes,
Well, that's well said. Yeah, that's really well said. Yep.
And a lot of people think I'm anti-religious, and I'm absolutely not. I'm anti what has become of religion, wars and polarity and people thinking their side is better than the other side. And you got to ask yourself, how can that be possible? How can, because they were born into their thing. So you're telling me that because you were born, you're chosen and they're not. Come on now. What if you were born in their, in their culture? It doesn't make sense.
We find ways, Joe. Us humans, we find ways to, again, not to get too deep, but we find ways to kill each other. We really do. We find ways to harm each other. And whether it's religion or more people have died at the hands of political wars than religious wars. Absolutely. The Civil War alone, World War II wasn't a religious war. The Civil War wasn't a religious war. So we will find ways to hurt each other. And religion's just another way we can take it, and men can twist it and put it to whatever devices they want to say, look at those guys, let's kill them now.
Right.
Or we destroy someone that's trying to evolve us into something higher. Every time. Like, Christ came along and he's like, hey, check this out. I'm going to tell you something different,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something different. I'm going to bring baptism into this thing. It's a different type of ritual. It's actually more ancient. It's funny how the Jews accepted that, but they didn't want to accept anything else,
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Like, he already knew what was going to happen. I know it's in your nature to do this to me, but I got to do it, or it's not going to. You're not going to evolve. That's
amazing.
That's something else. That's pretty intense. But you talk about. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one of my little favorite anecdotes when this type of stuff comes up comes from the most unlikely source. It's Dog the Bounty Hunter.
You got to be kidding me.
Well, wait for it. It's one of the most beautiful anecdotes ever that I think kind of sums this up. He tells a story about jogging one morning in Hawaii, and he's coming over a hill, and there's this Buddhist monastery in Hawaii, and it's Christmas morning. And he says all the Buddhist monks are out there and they're bowing and doing their meditative hum. and he was just, struck by it. So he ends up jogging by, and he knew one of the monks because he's famous, and they start talking, and he goes, "What are you guys doing?" And he goes, "Well, we're bowing to the master on Christmas Day." And he goes, "Well, wait a second. Who are you talking about?" He says, "Jesus." And he goes, "Well, wait a second. You're Buddhists. What are you doing bowing?" He's like, "We're bowing to the master, man. It's Jesus." And he realized in that moment, like, they're Buddhists. They're not Christian, but they recognized the eternal wisdom of how their religion and his, whatever Jesus was saying, was melded together. And we sit there and say, like, well, I'm a Buddhist or I'm a Christian. But the Buddhist monks themselves are like, no, Jesus knew it was up, and he knew we knew it was up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I just think that's such a beautiful analogy to the eternal truth.
Well, you were talking about how you felt evil in that movie theater, and I was going to ask you a little bit more about that. But I will tell you that it triggered another memory of mine, that I was in a club one time. You know, when you're in your early 20s, you first turn 21, you're hitting all the clubs, right? Because you can drink now. And I went to a club, and they're doing the techno music and everything, and everybody starts taking Molly and ecstasy. I didn't take any of it. I was just sipping back and drinking beer, and everything's hunky-dory, right, at first. But this is how this works. There's these cages in this club, and people can dance in them and stuff. And this is going to kind of get a little graphic, but I'm just telling you guys how I felt this evil. When people took this drug, it tunes into their animalistic nature. They think they feel ecstasy or whatever. But what's really happening is they're tuning into their nefesh. It's like it's a lower chakra, animalistic nature. And you can see them coming out like they're all sticking their tongues out, rubbing on each other, doing this crazy stuff. And I just sat back and looked at it, and I felt this surge of evil come over me, man, watching this stuff. Almost as if I could see their eyes changing, And I bolted out of that club. And I've been in tons of clubs before, been around it, whatever. But this experience was something different, man. It was, I saw people getting possessed by stuff, And I bolted out of there and said a prayer, and I was like, I didn't immediately, I'm never going to a club again, or it wasn't that, it was just an experience where I felt I was around evil, Not saying drugs or Molly's evil or rave part, I'm just saying something intensified at that moment where it felt dark.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I had to bolt. It was just one of those freaky feelings,
when you feel it. Yeah, definitely.
So, I missed somebody else's question there. Sorry about that, guys. So I haven't even asked you guys about any UFO experiences you've had. I figured that would have been the first thing I asked, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I've had a few of them. I have when I was up in Canada. My family's from New Brunswick, Canada, and we had taken a family trip with our cousins, aunts, and uncles and stuff. And I was probably 11 years old, and we were right on the beach. This is at night, 11:30 at night, and all the parents are in bed, and there's me and my two cousins. We're just laying down this huge rock, and we're looking up at the stars. There's no light pollution. It's just unbelievable. And you can just see forever. And we started talking about God and about different things. And then all of a sudden I saw this white light, and it just looked like a star and kind of moving across. And I pointed to it. My cousin's like, oh, that's just a satellite. And then we saw another one, and it was going in another direction. And then we saw another one. And I think I counted like 8 or so. And I was like, all right, are these all satellites all going in different directions? This doesn't make any freaking sense, So that was kind of my first kind of foray into that. But I've had just seen some weird craft, and a lot of them when I started writing the book, started doing the research, started seeing almost like the Phoenix Lights boomerang craft. But if you can imagine where the lights would be almost like this plus symbol or like an X. And the rest of the craft was like invisible. And we're out in the backyard, and it was this clear blue sky, and my daughter had noticed it and pointed to it, and we all looked up and we were watching this thing, and it was way up. At first it looked like a flock of geese, but then I realized, they weren't flying. It was all flying in unison. It looked like one craft, and it just popped in my mind. It's like, oh, that thing's kind of cloaking, and sure enough, I look behind it, and there's 2 military planes off at a safe distance, but they're following this thing, keeping up.
There you go, man. You witnessed something. They were on it too. As soon as it comes up on radar, they're all over it.
And like right over my house. But that time it was completely silent. And I was just fascinated that how my daughter just decided to look up at that moment to see it. Like if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't have noticed it. But and I had another encounter too where I said, all right, show me something. And I had this weird plane fly right over my head. And I was like, what is that?
So, what did that weird plane look like? Did it look like a drone?
You posted a picture of that,
I posted a picture of it because I couldn't find something similar. But if imagine a normal airliner, like a 747. But you know how like a hammerhead shark, the front of it looks like. So imagine that, but 3 levels of like a hammerhead shark's head in the front of the plane, and it looked like I've never seen. I'll send you a picture of what I found that looks like. It was completely silent. That's what blew my mind. It flew over my head. It was up, a good 10,000 feet or whatever it was, 20,000 feet. But I've never seen anything like it. I've had a difficult time trying to find anything else out there to say, oh, this is this type of plane. But I'll send you the picture of it. I haven't seen it since.
Well, it makes you, man, when the government comes out and admits something, that always, for sure, there's something way more going on than what they're telling you.
Right.
Like the chemtrails thing. I mean, I've admitted it several times. I didn't believe in it until the CIA came out and said, yeah, we do we call it weather manipulation. But we have been doing that, and I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. Now, so you're admitting it now, so what are you really doing?
Right, and how long and to what extent, right? If we're getting that much information, how much more do we not know?
These planes that you're seeing, there's no telling what kind of, aircraft that we have, and I bet you money that they've got aircraft they're trying to develop based on alien technology. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think Bob Lazar was too off about some of the stuff he talked about. As many people try to say that he was a hoax or whatever, I don't think he was.
I don't think he was either. I think he was telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
All planes make noises, from what unless it's like a stealth bomber event. But another thing that's been happening too all over the country. Have you guys? I don't know if you've been covering this or not, but it's Gigi tried to tell me it was planes breaking the sound barrier, but there's too many reports of all these booms and rattles and glass breaking and noises and stuff happening right now.
Yeah, there is.
And nobody knows what it is.
Yeah, that's odd. And then the trumpet sounds, that's been kind of going around as well.
There's been one official report by the FBI that said that, well, we do know there's explosions somewhere. We just don't know who's doing it.
Great.
Wow, there's your tax dollars at work. I mean, we figured that stuff out a long time ago. There are definitely explosions. Well, maybe not. It could be sunspots. We just had 3 volcanoes erupt. But nobody's... Like, I got this feeling that when Mother Nature gets tired of us, it shakes us off like a dog does a flea sometimes,
No doubt.
Right.
Like we're hurting the planet. But I don't want to go down that route because I'm not a... Oh, God, I can't say this on the radio. I'm not a big environmentalist as much as I should be. I'm just not. I missed another question because I was rattling off at the head. Do you guys think that UFOs disguise themselves as stars? Because the more I study this stuff about UFOs, the most revealing footage I've ever seen is stars these things that pretend to be stars, but eventually they start moving.
Yeah. I saw one in Florida February, where it was just this star that looked a little bit brighter than the other ones and just sitting there. And then all of a sudden it starts moving and kind of like dancing around and zip around. Then it goes back and stops and then keeps on. And so people keep on reporting, UFOs that look like white stars, and then all of a sudden they start moving from their position. They're just I have heard a lot more stories than I've thought I ever would about that type of experience.
Question in the Spreaker chat, I think it's for Matty, is can you tell us more about the black-eyed children, or I guess they're labeling black-eyed children in the theater, but can you go into that story anymore, or do you even feel comfortable talking about it?
No, I will. We're calling them black-eyed children, Ronny and I, because I've detailed the exact specifics to Ronny, and it seems closest to that, although I never saw their eyes. But it was during that time where I was reconverting into, the religious aspects of my life, and weird things started to happen. This is around the time I met that priest, Father Benedict Rochelle, who was involved in some Vatican activity in terms of investigating possessions and miracles. And I was just kind of entrenched in a very aggressive Catholicism at that time in terms of reconverting and the conversations I was having and the spiritual journey I was going on. And I went to go see a movie alone, and coincidentally, it was The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
You went to see that by yourself?
Yeah.
What are you thinking, man?
Well, it was part of this journey I was on, and also I was in New York City, and I would have stretches of time alone during that time. So I went to go see it, and sure enough, I heard some giggling and chatting behind me, like tittering, which would happen occasionally in a New York City movie theater. Kids would cut school or whatever, and they started throwing things at me, like, I'd hear that ting, ting, ting in between the seats. I'm like, are these kids seriously? And at first I wasn't thinking anything.
They want to punk you, man. They want you to jump up and go, stop it, damn it, or something.
Exactly. And I'm like,
make a fool of you.
Right. I don't want to get into a thing with some Manhattan, teenagers. I don't know how many there are. I don't know how old they are. Right. I'm just kind of like, just please stop. Please shut up so I can watch this movie and that type of thing. And it kept going. And so long story short, they definitely were throwing things at me, and they're getting louder. And it was, and with the horror of what's going on the screen, if you could imagine the scene. And by the way, when I went in there, I was all alone. The theater was literally
That's so crazy, brother. Listen, I've seen Emily Rose.
Yeah.
And it is not something I want to watch by myself. Not again, not even knowing what's about to happen. So I can imagine what you were going through.
Yeah, it's not easy. And also I hesitated telling this story for a long time because I was seeing that movie, and it's very easy to say, well, you were spooked and jump to conclusions, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I ended up standing up to go get an usher, and I walked, kind of down the aisle and heard as I was walking down the aisle, the kind of tittering, angry laughing, and there was 3 or 4 of them, maybe all in shadows. I didn't look because, again, I didn't want to get in a confrontation. I went out and talked to a manager or whoever, an employee. Could you get a manager? These kids throwing things. They're just, and went back to the theater, and they were gone, of course, and went back to the subway to go to whatever I was going to. And there was a man standing across the other side of the subway tracks who was just going the opposite direction on the other platform, staring at me in the most evil way. He was just, it was just bad. And I was just like, God, this is the worst. What is going on? That type of thing. And I went into my bag to get my cell phone, and my cell phone's gone. And I'm looking everywhere in my carry bag. My cell phone's gone. Long story short, these kids who at some point disappeared from the time I left the theater for maybe 30 seconds. I never saw it leave. Somehow got into my bag and took my cell phone, and took nothing else, not my wallet, not my computer, not my papers. And then people in my life started getting these really horrible voicemails. And
what do you
only
mean?
after you're like what you would hear in The Exorcist, what The Exorcist said to Alex, Father Karras, like your mother this, mother that, the worst language you could possibly imagine. And to make it even more frightening, I realized after the fact that a lot of the people, or most of the people that got left messages on my entire cell phone, address book, tended to be super religious people, including a man who lived with Father Groeschel, the priest I met who was into that. Out of the hundreds of contacts, like 5 people got these vile messages, and they were all either super Catholic, Christian, or somehow involved religious. So to me, I believe fully that it was some sort of trickster / demonic /
I think these things feed off your fear. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Like once you start actually focusing on it a little bit and you realize it's there, then it heightens it for you somehow. It just keeps feeding off of it.
I'm just so glad you just said that, because right now I'm trying to I'm hemming and hawing because I'm trying to find the words for this because I feel foolish telling it.
No.
To this day.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I mean? Like it's embarrassing, but I know what I felt and I know what I went through, and it's just it's horrifying.
Let me tell you a story real quick that'll validate that. In my early 20s, I had severe. I had a shift. Right, I mean, I used to party and do all kinds of drugs and drink, and I just stopped one day. Mm-hmm. And so I went through a severe psychological change, and I had, I don't know what they called it, agoraphoria or something, where I had panic attacks.
Oh.
Just hyperventilating type panic attacks where my life was crazy. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't half the time. And I had this for 2 years, and the only way I could beat it was to face my fears. I mean, I wouldn't even leave the house. It was crazy. But that's what happens when you can't relax on your own. You've been taking stuff to relax for years and years and years, and you just stop, right?
Right.
Well, I went to my grandfather, which was he's big into spiritual warfare, and he told me that I had a demon in me that was deaf and dumb or something. I don't know what he was talking about, but they tried to pray it out of me, and it didn't work and whatever. Well, at that point, I'm starting to freak out. Now I'm really focused, and I was focused on fear. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
Focused on fear. And I was working for my uncle at the time. We were framing houses, so we had to be out there at 6:30 every morning. So imagine waking up every morning in fear and wondering how in the hell you're going to get through the day. And there's lots of people that have this disorder. Well, as we go out to the job site, I don't know if you're familiar with construction work at all, but I look up and there's this guy's name's Terry, or he's one of the 3 brothers, but he's on a scaffold, and it's 6:30 in the morning. I'm already feeling like this evil presence, and he looks at me and points and he says, "Hey, Joe," and it's not where I could hear him. It's just a lip reading thing, and he said, "Satan's got you," and he starts laughing, right?
Wow.
And I run into the porta potty and shut the door because I'm having a panic attack now. And this is not a place I want to be, is a porta potty.
God.
And I leave the porta potty. I go out, and a little later, in about an hour and a half, I approach him and I said, "Why did you say that to me?" And he was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I thought he was just playing at first. I said, "Dude, you looked at me and told me that Satan has me." And he's like, "Dude, you need to get your head checked. I swear on everything that I never even saw you there. I wasn't even up on that scaffold this morning." And I was like, "What?" And I started talking to the crew, and he was like, "No, he was out there, pulling the cords and stuff." And I was like,
"My God.
Oh my God." And I had another panic, instantly went into another panic attack.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is I think whatever this thing is like the more you feed it, the more it tries to get you,
Yes. And
next thing you know, you're in a padded room.
Yeah, right. They know that you're in a vulnerable state, and they will attack.
Yeah, and the doctors, they would give me Xanax, I guess this Lexapro, everything under the sun. It turned me into a zombie, and you know how I beat that? It took me 2 years to beat it, but I beat it with, imagine this: sunlight, laughter, exercise, and facing every fear that I had one at a time. It was like climbing a mountain. The hardest thing I ever did.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
But isn't that crazy how the littlest things will beat it?
Oh,
laughter, sunlight, and exercise.
Basics.
Yeah. And everybody told me, you're going to have this, Joe, the rest of your life. You're probably going to have to take these pills the rest of your life. You need to stay in church. You need to keep praying. Like, I was a prisoner in my own mind. And I think that these demons kind of, if that's what they are, I think that's what they do. I think they feed off of your bad psyche. They want you to be paranoid. They want to keep making you think that you're in this, that you're being attacked. And I don't know, it's hard to explain. But as you were talking about that, I remembered that.
Yeah.
Anyways, now I'm embarrassed.
No, it's inspiring, Joe. You should be proud. That's an incredible story. I mean, you look at the rash of recent in the news, like how many more celebrities do we need to find, hanging themselves from Chris Cornell to Kate Spade to Anthony Bourdain. I mean, the list just keeps getting longer and longer.
Yeah. And then people are saying in the chat, don't forget good friends. Well, let me tell you, most of the friends that I thought were friends were just telling other people that I was crazy, like I was losing my mind and stuff.
Right.
There was an actual rumor going around in town that I'd killed myself.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of town I live in, though. So they were all kind of surprised to see me 3 years later in perfect health and happy. But that's what it took.
Unbelievable.
So so I don't doubt any stories that when people say they've had these experiences or they feel evil or I don't know, the voicemail thing, that is kind of freaky though. That's kind of like a different type of attack, I would think. How did they even get the numbers?
Well, that's so exactly. Scrolling. If they did take my phone and they were real kids, let's say, they would fine. You could say, well, they scrolled through my phone, but it's an amazing coincidence that everybody they called and left these vile messages to happened to be super religious people.
Huh. Yeah, well, I believe in karma, and I promise you they're probably going to get theirs too. But I don't know if Ronnie, have you ever been around that where you just felt like evil was there? Like you didn't have to see it, you just knew it was there.
Yeah, I've always felt like I had a pretty good being self-aware. I've always been able to kind of know when to get out of a situation, or just have that follow your gut kind of feeling, where it's like I don't like this.
Yeah,
I always listen to that. Like if I feel like I'm supposed to get out of this room, or you shouldn't be hanging out with this friend tonight, I listen to that. And I think also there's the fear of, being brought up in the church too, talk about demons and things like that. So when something happens or you get scared, then you just start kind of feeding that by continuing to have fear. So I try to catch myself when I'm doing that.
Well, I mean, I can tell you guys, when I went through that phase, there was nothing that got me through that except, I left out one of the most important things was prayer. I prayed every day.
Yep.
Every day I prayed. I mean, I even later, I opened up the book of Psalms and would repeat prayers over and over again. And I actually had a crazy, like the craft type of experience doing that, where books, the door flew open and stuff was flying around. I thought it was wind, but now that I think about it, that was a steel door. And there's no way it could have blew open. And a lot of people tell me that I was exercising myself. That's what people have told me. Through the book of Psalms, which I later found out that the book of Psalms is actually a book called the Shemush Tehillim that the Hebrews wrote, which was a magical book that they used. That's exactly what they used it for. Spiritual warfare.
To clear themselves out.
Yeah. I just thought it was a book of prayers. Had no idea the real power of it.
We were talking earlier in the in this episode when we first started about. I remember we were joking about, or not joking, but it was funny that we, like Ronnie, you said, show me, and then get spooked when you were shown. And I had an experience, Joe, similar to you, where I was laying in bed, and this is around that same time that I alluded to earlier about my spiritual reconversion, and I was praying, and I felt the warmth almost like if you've ever been injured or something, you've been given morphine of some kind.
Oh yeah, warm oil. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it washed over me from head to toe. Tears started coming down my eyes, and I got so freaked out. Now, this is all benevolent and warm and lovely, but I was like, oh. I was like, is that you, Jesus? I don't want it. It freaked me out that an unseen entity could. So it's funny. We go to church and we pray and we talk about all the spiritual stuff, but when it actually happens to you on a cellular, it's terrifying. Even the good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little intense for sure, but you got to tell yourself that, like, I know I can't prove it, but I know that there's something out there protecting all of us, even the bad people, because I see it too much. I just see things that's impossible. And if you've ever had kids, I've interviewed Jeff Harmon about this, where he talked about, if you ever have a child and you see a child's eyes the first time they open it, they'll never look like that again. And what I think is what you're looking at right there is pure divine. You're looking at something divine. It's almost like you're looking at an angel. It's hard to explain.
Right on again. I always say when Max, my son, came out, I was the one thing that shocked me was how he was alert. I expected like the scrunched up eyes and the wailing. He came out, blank expression, eyes wide open, looked right in my eyes. He subsequently went to the screaming baby with the eyes closed, but when he first came out, he was locked in on me, and I'll never forget that. I think you're exactly right, Joe.
Yeah, it was so intense. I can't explain it. It was the most intense thing I ever saw. It was my son opening his eyes for the first time.
Yes.
And it blew my doors down. Like, I was like, what is that? That's not a human. That's something way more special,
Yes.
And people think it's like, well, that's just you and your child. Well, my son's eyes don't look like that anymore. I'm just saying, when he was born, it was something different. And I'm just saying, if at that point I could have been an atheist, it would have converted me. And I'm sure there's atheists that have had kids, but I don't know how you can look into a kid's eyes after the first time they open their eyes and say, there's nothing else out there.
Man, I'm so glad you said that. It was 13 years ago for me, and that's the one thing I remember the most clearly is how surprised I was how his eyes looked right in mine.
That's awesome.
Jeff told me, Jeff Harmon, who I've talked to, he told me he could actually see, I guess he's got some type of vision where some people can see things, and he said he could actually see the light, like two lights entering the child's eyes when he took his first breath. And I was thinking,
wow.
And that's a good point, Dennis. I wonder if black-eyed children ever grow up. Why are their eyes black? Why is there so many stories about it? I've never seen one. Don't want to see one.
Don't want to see one. How about the creepy things they're reported to say? Like, I read an account the other day. Who's the guy, the monster book we're going to have on?
Weatherly. David Weatherly.
David Weatherly wrote a great
nice
book. Yeah, and one of his chapters about black-eyed children, and I think there was an account in there where a guy, it's so horrifying. I think he was like a sheriff. And he went to get takeout, and he's literally opening his front door with the takeout in one hand and keying in, and there's a black-eyed child to his right, and he turns, and the child says, "It is eating time. Let me in." Those type. Like, why are they talking in those weird? Like, it's just the most horrifying thing.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
I'd be like, here, take my food. You can have it. Get away from me. Actually, I had that happen one time. Went to Burger King. You go get your food and you set it down, then you go back and get ketchup. Yeah. I forgot to get up and go get ketchup. So I got up to go get ketchup. I turn around and there's this homeless dude eating my food.
No.
And he just looked at me like it was nothing, and he's just eating my burger and fries like, thanks, buddy. And I'm like, here, if you want some ketchup, And I didn't know what else to do. I felt like yelling at the guy, but it's another one of those awkward moments that I told y'all that I had earlier where I kind of knew what was right and wrong at the time, and I didn't know what to do, so I just let it go.
That's.
We only got a few minutes left here, guys. So there is I want to eat your heart. That's not something to put in the chat. That's kind of scary.
What?
There's one last question that I need to ask here. I think it's from Rick. He's wondering about Something about HARP, I think, is what it was. The sounds. I guess he's wanting to know if you guys think that there are weapons that are out there using frequencies on us.
Oh yeah. Well, there's what was it?
Stories right now about Chinese workers
exactly.
being decimated by these sounds.
Right, they're hearing these. Yeah, they're
getting sick. It's a sonic. It's a sonic weapon of some kind that they've been talking about for years now. But right now in the news, it's dominating that entire office spaces are being cleared out, and they don't know who it is or what it is, but they're being sickened by these sonic sounds. And look, I mean, what a brilliant espionage to use. If you can have that technology, you can disable an enemy force by using these things and test it on your own people. I mean, it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, there was also, I brought this up on the other show I do, Lighting the Void, a couple of weeks ago. There was also I believe it was a U.S. government agent in Cuba, and a few other people kept reporting that they were hearing strange, high-pitched noises or sounds, and then the next thing, they either end up with a seizure or some type of brain injury afterwards, and nobody knew where it was coming from. And the only U.S. official statement was they made a statement, said that we're looking into this. You know, like, how do we know you're not doing it? You know, just tell us you're looking into it. That's so dumb.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
They don't even come out and give us empathy anymore or sympathy.
Right.
They don't. Right. They used to come out and get in front of the microphone and go say, look, we know this is scaring you guys. We know that how you feel. They would try to pull the customer service thing on us, you know? Like, hey, we know there's a problem, but we just can't do anything about it. That's how customer service is, right?
Right.
They used to give us that, but now they don't even do that anymore. They just say, yeah, we're looking into it. We don't have a clue either. Thanks. No more questions. And it's extremely frustrating. But with these last few minutes here, I want to get as detailed as possible about, you know, how to find you guys on the internet, on the web, maybe some of your future plans, how they can check you out, how they can get Ronnie's book. So plug away, gentlemen.
Sure. Oh, I love it. iTunes, baby. We're on iTunes.
iTunes, SoundCloud. If you don't have iTunes, we're going to have the episodes on YouTube. So pretty much a week after we put them up on iTunes, we'll have the video component up there. But you can find us on Facebook at Monsterland Podcasts, Twitter, Snap, and Instagram at Monsterland Pod. And if you're looking to get the book, Monsterland, you can find it on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com.
Is that all you got? Come on, Matty. I know you got some more places you're at. Barrel this thing. Let's hear it.
All right. You can find me on social media at the Matty Blake. You can watch my old drilling down episodes on demand on History Channel. You can go to History Channel, history.com, their website. If you're into the Curse of Oak Island, I do that companion show, Drilling Down. And hopefully there's going to be a season 6. I'm confident there will be, but there's been no official word yet on the season 6 of Oak Island. And just subscribe, Monsterland Podcasts, like us, share us, please. We appreciate all the support.
I tell you what, this has probably been one of the best conversations I've ever had on the show. Usually we talk about a subject matter, but tonight we talked about all things in matter, you know, and probably not matter as well. And it was very fun, man. We'll have to do this again one of these days, guys.
We would love
very
to.
Cool.
Thank you so much, man.
Joe, you're awesome, man. Great. That was so much fun. It went fast.
Yeah. I hope you guys drank a beer for me, too, you know.
We did.
Guys, we're going to get out of here, but don't forget, after the show on the Fringe FM, Spaced Out Radio, the live broadcast continues all the way into the morning. S4 is going to be on right after this, so make sure if you're listening live and you're still wide awake, there's plenty more to listen to. And we'll see you guys next Saturday. Good night.